So this kid gets home from school, right? It was supposed to be just another normal day, but something was off. He receives a letter, and the moment he opens it, Haruto is teleported to another dimension. The boy had no idea what was about to happen. The person who brought him here begins to speak in his head. It turns out to be a version of himself from 10 years in the future. His future self warns him that Haruto will become the greatest space-time mage of all time, but it will be too late. So he realized he had to contact his past self to speed things up. Now, he has to go to the F-rank dungeon and clear it alone. This is the only way to speak with his future self again, back at home. The protagonist wonders if any of this makes sense, and then he remembers his day, his horrible day at school. At Haruto's school, he was basically thrown around, and used his face to mop the floor. Why? Because of his classmates. They were mocking him, saying it was just a basic spell and that he shouldn't have been hit. The poor guy was furious, but he was too weak to even get up. Haruto just stood there, and asked if they were done. He wanted them to return something they took from him. The guys told him to go, and buy snacks for everyone. He did, but he forgot the soda, and that was a big mistake. Because of that, his punishment was to take some fire spells. The bully launched another attack and almost hit Haruto. At least this time, the poor boy didn't get his face dragged across the floor. Their innocent fun was interrupted when a girl showed up, and she was furious. This is Shinonome, and she's part of the disciplinary committee. They returned what they took from Haruto, but he wasn't fast enough to catch it. He dropped it, and his phone screen cracked, just like his reputation. She ran to him to see if he was okay, but he told her to stay away. If she stays close to him, people will start treating her the same way they treat him. The girl doesn't argue, but she's very worried about him. Frustrated by his weakness, Haruto tells his friend that they can't be like they were when they were kids anymore. At school, everyone laughed at him behind his back, whispering about how he was the weakest kid there and wondering how he even got enrolled. He only got in because of his parents' connections, and, unfortunately, they're no longer around. They had the misfortune of being on a plane that had a malfunction. After that terrible day, Haruto made a decision. He was going to the dungeon, the one his future self told him about. He brought the letter, and the thing started talking to him, guiding him to a blank wall. He had to press the letter against the wall, and like magic, it opened and revealed a secret passage. Inside the room, a blue stone was floating, held by chains. It's a skill cube. If you touch it, you gain a skill. Haruto approached and saw his own pathetic reflection before touching it. The stone just gave his hand a shock, and it turned red as lines of energy began to flow across all the walls, and then the ceiling opened up. All the concrete blocks in the room were sucked upwards and formed a giant stone golem. You could see it even through all the dust. Haruto was paralyzed with fear. There was no way he could fight that. When the creature moved, it was incredibly fast. It hit him with an attack so fast that he couldn't even process it. He was thrown against a wall with the letter from the future on one side and his broken phone on the other. The photo on its screen caught his attention. It was his family, the only people who had ever loved him and made him feel good. Then the letter began to speak to him again. The voice in the letter loved him and cared for him too. And maybe, just maybe, this person loves him more. Because it is him, his future self. Is he just going to accept this? Is he going to lose everything again, right here in this dark place? Haruto remembered school, that humiliation. He couldn't let it go. He had to get his revenge. The golem attacked furiously. Haruto reached for his sword, but he was hit. A system message appeared. Hidden mission requirements have been fulfilled. The adventurer's death has been cancelled. Then our boy simply explodes with energy, a massive aura erupting in every direction, and his body begins to heal. The concept of space-time has been acquired. Haruto was no longer the same loser from before. Shrouded in blue lightning and with a renewed look, a system window reveals that he has finally acquired space-time magic. The voice from the future apologizes for not warning him about the trap sooner. He explains that space-time magic will only be discovered in 10 years, making it an exclusive skill. The young man asks if he really came from the future, and his older self confirms that the tutorial has already begun. The golem attacks again, but now the boy is ready to fight back with this. He dodges the monster's strike with an impressive speed he didn't have before. The protagonist realizes his body is much lighter and wonders if it's the effect of the skill. Then the letter says it will teach him how to fight, telling him not to see with his eyes, but to feel. The voice from the future explains that the boy must feel the flow of time that governs the world. Concentrating, the boy repeats the words of his older self, trying to comprehend the power. The entity says that it knows he can do it, because in the end, they are the same person. Seeing this, the stone monster prepares an even more powerful attack to crush him. However, the protagonist closes his eyes and concentrates, trying to feel the flow around him. The boy remains motionless as the creature's giant fist descends upon him. He tries to sense the flow of time in the world just as his older self instructed, his eyes glowing intensely. The boy snaps his fingers, looking more confident, as the creature attacks again. But the young man leaps back, dodging the attack by a hair's breadth, and then he smiles. Confidently, he declares that he will use space-time magic. With his new speed, he dashes up the golem's arm, leaving it stunned. At that moment, a system window pops up, and he uses the physical acceleration skill. The boy shoots forward like a spring, gaining incredible speed. Suddenly, he scales the monster at high speed, appearing like a streak of blue light in the darkness. Upon reaching the top, he leaps into the air, realizing just how impressive his new power is. Then, he plunges his energized sword directly into the golem's weak spot. The boy lands on the enemy's head, his sword plunged to the hilt into the core within. At that moment, the stone creature's core slowly begins to shatter. A flash of purple light blinds everything around, signaling the monster's end. The creature then crumbles into countless fragments that fly across the room. After destroying the enemy, the young man lands safely on the floor of the secret chamber. Looking back, he watches as the golem's remaining pieces turn to dust. A system window appears, showing that he leveled up 4 times and earned a lot of credits. Faced with the rewards, the entity asks if he finally believes in him now. Then the letter calls him Shrimp, his loser nickname from school. The boy holds the envelope and admits he trusts him a little, and the voice says it's time for the next phase. As he leaves the room, the young man asks if there's anything else to do, and the letter confirms that there is. His future self says they need to go to Rhinestone because she is going to die today. The protagonist stops abruptly. Shocked by the revelation, he wonders what this means. Completely confused, he demands an explanation for what he just heard. The voice confirms that his childhood friend, Rini, is truly in danger. She is going to enter a dungeon with friends and die to a hidden boss that appears in her path. His older self instructs him to save this girl, so the being asks him to use his power to alter her fate. With determination in his eyes, the voice calls him the space-time mage and tells him to act. The voice from the future details that the girl will die today in the Rank D Ikebukuro dungeon. The entity explains that the cause will be a surprise, a hidden Rank C boss that will appear. The future self continues, saying that her party will call for help, but no one will arrive in time. Furious with the explanation, the young man screams for the voice to shut up and runs towards the dungeon. He then asks, angrily, why his older self didn't warn him about this much sooner. The letter reminds him that he hates getting involved with others, and that's why he acts indifferently. Upon arriving at the dungeon, the boy comes face to face with a monster, but ignores it and continues forward. The voice provokes him, calling him by the nickname Germ to test his determination. The being tells him to stop pretending he doesn't care about anything and to accept his feelings. The entity says he can change the world with the power he now holds in his hands as the boy advances and defeats all the goblins in his path at once. The voice finishes by saying that the future depends only on the actions he takes now. The protagonist tells his future self to shut up. He slides across the floor with his aura activated and then firmly declares that he will do what his heart tells him, no matter what happens. Satisfied, the entity says that this was the answer it was waiting for, and that it will reward him for it. Meanwhile, in the central section of the dungeon, a huge explosion of energy erupts. The force of the impact throws Rin violently backward, unable to react. She hits the ground hard, and her classmates watch the scene in horror from a distance. We see the girl on the ground as a friend screams her name in despair. The young woman remains unconscious, fallen and wounded on the ground. With difficulty, she opens one eye and faces the being that attacked her moments before. Before them appears a knight in black armor, holding a giant sword. Then, a window reveals he is the C-rank extra boss, the terrifying Dark Sentinel. Frightened, her friends panic. While one girl tries to call for help, another young woman with a staff tries to motivate the group to fight together. However, one of the boys backs away in fear, saying that he doesn't want to fight and end up dead. But the monster gives them no time to argue and charges to attack again. Its giant blade descends with devastating force toward the students. The blow hits the ground, causing a massive explosion of purple energy on the spot. After the dust settles, we see Rin, panting and exhausted. In her eyes, the reflection shows all her friends defeated on the dungeon floor. Looking ahead, the girl realizes she is the only one who can still stand. Her companions are all gravely injured and can no longer continue fighting. With his last bit of strength, one of them begs the young woman to save him from his predicament. Without hesitating, the girl turns and faces the Sentinel, the Dark Sentinel, for one last attempt. With a battle cry, she charges forward with her spear, flaming, to attack the monster. The blow strikes the creature's armor head-on, but seems to have no effect. In response, the boss unleashes a wave of blue energy that effortlessly repels it. Completely shocked, the young woman realizes her strongest attack was useless. Seeing its chance, the Black Knight raises his sword for the final blow. The giant blade descends swiftly toward the helpless girl on the ground. In desperation, she screams for help, and a skill window suddenly appears. In that instant, the protagonist appears and stops the blow using chains of energy. The boy asks his friend if she is all right. Shocked, the girl recognizes him. She can't believe what she is seeing. With tears in her eyes, the girl still can't believe he is really there. The boy shields her with his body and tells her to stay back while he holds the chains. He then turns to the Dark Sentinel and realizes his chains will not last much longer. With a powerful blow, the monster breaks free, and the young man leaps away to avoid being hit. He lands safely at a distance from the enemy, preparing himself for combat. The creature attacks again, but the boy uses his speed to dodge the blow, getting close enough. He manages to block the giant's sword with his own blade. He sees a weak spot in the monster's armor, and he aims his attack right there. However, as he strikes, he realizes that the boss's armor is much more resilient than it looked. The force of the impact pushes him back, and he struggles not to be thrown far. The enemy's sword keeps pressing against his. Sparks fly everywhere. He is finally thrown back, and the monster shatters a piece of our boy's sword. Seeing this, the boy realizes that the boss is preparing some kind of attack. From a distance, the gem glows with a dark energy and begins to crack, releasing immense power. Then the monster fires a massive beam of purple energy toward the young man. The creature's attack causes a gigantic explosion of purple energy throughout the entire room. But the boy uses physical acceleration to dodge the deadly beam by a hair's breadth. With his eyes glowing, he understands that his sword alone will not be enough. He remembers how his blade could not even scratch the monster's armor. With that, he concludes that there must be a weak spot somewhere in the enemy's defense. Then the young man realizes the weak spot is the head, and that he needs to direct his attack there. The voice warns him that the sword is useless, but the boy charges forward to attack anyway. He smirks and says he already knows that while using material restoration magic. With that, the broken sword begins to reconstruct itself in front of his face. But the monster prepares a dark energy attack. However, in that instant, the sword strikes the boss's head, stunning it for a moment. Seizing the opportunity, the boy attacks with everything he has, causing an explosion of blue energy. The blow lands a direct hit, and the monster's head begins to crack from the impact. He lands safely as the voice says he has managed to change fate. In front of his friend, the hero looks at the defeated enemy on the dungeon floor. Still on the ground, the girl looks up, shocked by the protagonist's abilities. With firm steps, the girl stands up and walks towards the boy, wanting explanations. She continues walking and angrily asks how he managed to do that. Completely confused, his friend shouts again, wanting to understand what happened, pointing at her savior. The young woman demands that he explain himself immediately. But before anything else, she says she will thank him for saving the group. With her face slightly flushed, she shouts her thanks for saving her and her companions. The boy feels a bit embarrassed by the gratitude, and says it was nothing. Then the young woman approaches, quite close, and asks what kind of magic he used at that moment. The voice of the future warns him not to mention time-space magic. The girl looks at him suspiciously, and the boy doesn't know what to say. Changing the subject, he asks her to keep it a secret that he was the one who saved her. The girl is shocked by the request, and he explains that he doesn't want to draw attention to himself. The voice tells him to keep stalling, and his friend is surprised by the sound. His friend asks if that voice was his, but the young man immediately denies it. The entity apologizes, but the boy promises to take revenge on her later for that. Confused, the boy doesn't know what to say to his friend after the confusion. Next, he invents a story about testing a sword skill that is still incomplete. Because of this, the young man desperately pleads with her to keep it a secret. For now, with a flushed face, the girl seems to consider her friend's proposal. Then, with a suggestive look, she asks if this is a secret just between the two of them. The protagonist confirms, somewhat confused by his companion's unexpected reaction. With a smile, his friend finally agrees, and the boy sighs in relief for having escaped. Back at school, the protagonist narrates that he avoided the death that was destined for Rini. He also reflects that at the same time he gained enormous power and magic. The boy remembers that the past cannot be changed while the class bell rings. But now the young man concludes that with his new powers, he can finally change the future. At that moment, a classmate calls him by his nickname, Jeremy, to tease him. We see a trio of bullies laughing and mocking our hero. For no apparent reason, their leader says he heard that the boy went to the dungeon and ran away from there. They continue to mock him, saying that he doesn't disappoint for having attracted an extra boss. The bully says that a friend got hurt and went to the hospital with a hefty bill. Smiling, he demands money to not tell anyone that he saw the boy there. Surrounded by the bullies, our hero remains silent, not responding. Angered, one of the guys creates a fireball and threatens the young man with his magic. Calmly, the protagonist responds. He firmly states that he doesn't want to be attacked by them. The bully is surprised by the response and seems unable to believe what he just heard. With a dark gaze, the boy repeats that he doesn't want to and calls him pathetic trash, enraging the bully. The group's leader lunges at him with a clenched fist, ready to strike, but the protagonist narrates that, thanks to his enhanced abilities, everything has changed now. He can track every movement of his enemy with perfect precision. With that, the boy dodges and counterattacks his blows with incredible speed in an instant. All three bullies are on the ground, completely defeated, shocked. They look up at the boy and wonder what the hell happened to him. The boy stares them down, coldly, and warns them to never show their faces in front of him again. He then takes out a lighter, while holding the bullies' items, and asks if they know what will happen if they disobey. Terrified, the bullies point at the boy, not knowing what to say to the threat. With the lighter lit, he seals the promise between them in a very intimidating way. He repeats his gentle request with a look that makes it clear what will happen if they fail. Terrified, the three boys nod their heads in agreement, not daring to say another word. Relieved, the young man sighs and decides it's best to head back to the classroom. In class, he wonders if the next lesson will be the measurement of magical elements. The teacher announces that they will begin the semester's measurement and calls the boy's name. Our hero politely stands up and answers the teacher's call for the test. He remembers that last time his magical power was practically zero in everything, but now, as the space-time mage, he wonders what the new result will be as he walks forward. The boy thinks about using his new magic just to test it. He then touches the magic mirror under the watchful eye of the class teacher, closing his eyes. The boy concentrates and begins to release his energy. A bluish aura, his eyes glow with an intense light as he activates his secret ability. A brilliant light explodes from the mirror, leaving the teacher completely shocked by the scene. He is completely paralyzed. Without understanding what is happening next, a huge explosion of blue energy erupts and blinds everyone in the classroom. The force is so great that the magic mirror cracks and shatters. In utter shock, the teacher screams that this is impossible, and it can't be true. Scratching his head, the boy bitterly regrets using so much power at once. Our hero realizes that instead of being discreet, he ended up drawing a lot of attention. Meanwhile, his friend Rini tries to hold back her laughter at her friend's situation. After class, the young man starts hearing various whispers wherever he goes in the hallways. The students comment that he destroyed the device and has power above A rank. The protagonist realizes the comments about him changed completely overnight. He then heads home, feeling more tired than usual from all the attention. But suddenly, a familiar voice calls his name, and the boy turns to look. The young man is confused and looks around, trying to figure out where the call came from. The mysterious voice says it's right there, but he still doesn't understand what's happening. Then something appears out of nowhere right in front of him. Completely startled, the boy screams, not understanding what is going on. Suddenly, a cute pink creature appears and reveals itself as the mysterious voice. With a look of astonishment, he finally recognizes the voice that was calling him. The young man asks if it's his future self, and why it has such a strange appearance. The doll explains that it used space-time magic to possess a stuffed animal. But at that moment, the entity says there's an emergency, and they need to act quickly. The plushie then says, there's no time for small talk now. His future self reveals that the Chaos Dragon has appeared much earlier than expected. Our hero tenses up and asks about this dragon. Gritting his teeth in fear, the boy learns that it's a very dangerous creature. It's an alpha-level monster marked for extermination that has already attacked several people. The cute little creature explains that the beast destroyed the Regional Adventurers Guild, and with that, the beast caused an unprecedented catastrophe, leaving many injured. The entity said that's exactly what happened in its original timeline. Now, they need to defeat it, or another tragedy will occur. Just as history foretold, the boy is stunned by the revelation of the impending catastrophe. He then suggests calling the Adventurers Guild to request a hunting party. At this moment, the doll interrupts him and says there's no more time, because it's already too late. The young man is confused, and his future version reveals that the dragon is already right here. At that moment, the gigantic Chaos Dragon appears, roaring in front of them. The protagonist panics and asks why the creature isn't in a dungeon. His future self explains that this is a species that travels in the open sky. At this rate, he realizes the school will be completely destroyed by the monster. Outside, the other students are walking around calmly, oblivious to the threat, A group of students is chatting casually until the sky suddenly darkens. Looking up, they see the beast and wonder why it's there. The monster's glowing red eye glares down at the students with pure malice. Terrified, the students start running desperately for their lives, as a blonde girl shouts for the normal students. She tells them to evacuate the area immediately. Then she and her group of mages prepare for battle. As the fight is about to begin, the boy recognizes the group as the Student Council of Mages. A huge pink magic circle then forms on the ground, preparing a powerful attack. Several smaller circles appear around the beast, setting the stage for the assault. The students launch a combined magical attack directly at the monster, as their leader shouts that the beast will not set foot in their school. Then, their powerful pink magic strikes the dragon head-on, causing an intensely bright light. A massive explosion illuminates the entire sky, but despite the direct hit, the giant monster seems completely unfazed. It appears the threat has been contained, and the team members celebrate, believing they have defeated the beast. With a confident smile, the blonde girl believes her team has done a good job, but to everyone's shock, the attack had no effect, and they can't believe what they are seeing. The malevolent creature seems to absorb the attack and prepares for a devastating counter. Next, the dragon fires a beam of purple energy towards the young mages. In the blink of an eye, the entire student council is completely wiped out by the monster. His future self says, "This is no surprise, as they are just students." The cute doll calls the boy's name in a serious voice, then spits a pink goo right in our protagonist's face. The young man yells, asking what the hell it thinks it's doing. His future self explains that it's a dragon sent to attract the beast, which will make the monster chase him and ignore everyone else. With that, the entity tells him it is now his turn to finally defeat the dragon. The monster's red eye locks onto him, and the gigantic creature charges in his direction. The doll desperately screams for the boy to run as fast as possible, and he immediately runs for his life. As the beast tries to crush him from behind, he glances back with a worried expression. He hears his friend asking the other girl if she is okay. The young man sees Rina and the other council members defeated on the ground. His future self asks if he wants to keep the girl out of this battle, and the boy confirms, so the entity tells him to go. This will reduce the chances of the others being noticed. So with that, our hero activates physical acceleration. He begins to flee at high speed, and the giant monster roars and pursues him fiercely through the city streets. At that moment, the young man lures the beast to the Nakano train station in Tokyo for a fight. The protagonist confirms that the place is empty, and the entity instructs him to jump the fence. After jumping the fence, he turns around and asks about the creature's characteristics. The cute creature says that its element is darkness, and that its breath can defeat enemies. She then explains that it is resistant to physical attacks, and the young man understands why. The entity confirms and explains that because it is not intelligent, the scent worked to lure it. The boy agrees, and the entity says that 500,000 credits were a good investment. Shocked, the boy asks if he correctly heard the absurd amount of money spent. Furious, he grabs the doll upon learning that the amount was taken from his account without permission, and asks how his future self managed to discover his bank password, although the reason is quite obvious. Completely dejected by the situation, the young man thinks this is crazy. His partner tells him not to worry, because he will get the money back quickly. She explains that the money is just a bonus, and that the real prize is a skill stone. With this stone, he will obtain a new and powerful time and space magic. The protagonist swallows hard, and tells them to continue the plan from where they left off. The doll reveals that because it is young, the monster's weakness, its core will be exposed, but before she could say the location, the beast roars and attacks them with all its might. The force of the blow is so great that our hero is thrown far away. Then the cute creature yells for him to be careful, and the boy thanks her for the useless advice at that moment. The dragon fires a giant beam of purple energy in his direction, and a huge explosion occurs. And the young man tries to defend himself as best he can with his sword. The boy manages to dodge, and says that he narrowly avoided the creature's devastating blow, but suddenly, he notices something strange, and gets a look of total shock. The pink explosion happens exactly where he was standing, just a few seconds before. The shockwave is so powerful that it destroys everything around. With incredible force amidst all the smoke, the giant monster lands on the ground and observes the damage caused with a malicious smile. The beast believes it has won, and its chest begins to glow. Out of nowhere, a blue glow appears, and a sword strike hits the dragon right in the chest. The creature is confused, not understanding what happened, and the young man begins to explain. He reveals that what the beast saw was just his afterimage from half a second ago. His partner says that he used space-time magic to dodge, and she is proud. Without wasting time, the boy leaps towards the monster to attack its weak spot. He finally sees the dragon's core shining in the chest of the enormous creature. With a determined gaze, our hero shouts that he has finally found what he was looking for. Then, with all his strength, he prepares a devastating blow to the core. The sword hits the beast's weak spot head-on, causing an intense glow. The young man says that something doesn't feel right, and despite the blow, he has a bad feeling. Suddenly, the beast's body dissolves into purple energy and sucks our hero inside. Completely confused, the young man wonders what the hell is happening around him. Then, the monster materializes again from that strange smoke. Annoyed, he complains that his future self never mentioned this bizarre ability. The entity explains that the beast's body can turn into poison, and that he needs to be. With a sideways glance, the boy asks to be informed about these things before the fight begins. The doll then starts to explain that the dragon uses its energy to create a body. With that, the creature finishes regenerating and roars. With all its malice, the purple smoke then transforms into several bats that fly towards him. Startled, the protagonist says it's impossible for that monster to be a hatchling. His partner confirms that a powerful enemy, who was supposed to appear in 5 years, has shown up now. The young man asks why such a great threat appeared so early in the story. The entity replies that, maybe, it's because he changed the future, and now he must defeat it. Sighing, our hero complains that his future self is just passing all the responsibility onto him. At this moment, the swarm of bats flies towards him, leaving him completely in shock. With no time to lose, he activates his physical acceleration to escape the swarm of creatures. In mid-air, he quickly slashes one of the dark bats chasing him. The doll notices that the small dragons don't turn into poison when defeated. The entity advises him to defeat the minions first, and then wait for the right moment to attack. The young man pulls himself together and agrees with the plan, saying that's exactly what he'll do. Next, he begins to concentrate energy in his feet, preparing for his next action. With a determined look, the boy prepares to put the plan into motion and end the fight. At that moment, he dashes forward at an impressive speed, leaving a trail of light behind him. With his sword in hand, he cuts down all the dark creatures that appear in his path. The hero continues his relentless attack, destroying several of the monsters with his strikes. His partner watches the fight and calculates that he should level up about 3 times after this battle. Panting, the boy stops for a moment to catch his breath, believing he has defeated all the smaller enemies, but suddenly, the main creature reappears at the end of the tracks, its core glowing brightly. Our boy is shocked by the sight before him. Taking advantage of the distraction, the dragon fires a devastating energy beam in their direction. A massive explosion erupts at the scene, engulfing everything around in its flames. Struck head-on by the blast, our hero is sent flying by the impact, but the creature doesn't stop and immediately begins to charge another dark energy beam. With wide-open eyes, the young man realizes he won't have time to dodge the attack. Annoyed, the young man complains that he barely had time to breathe before another powerful attack was launched. A second explosion lights up everything, but the result seems a little different this time. He then grumbles that he wasted too much energy on the minions. The boy realizes that, at this rate, he only has a few more minutes before he runs out of strength. With that, he decides he needs to strike the monster's core before it's too late. Suddenly, the protagonist is surprised, as he notices something strange about the enemy. The monster then begins to fly high, and his partner warns that his attacks won't reach it. In the sky, the beast roars and prepares to launch another devastating attack from above. Desperate, the young man wonders what he can do in this complicated situation. He then looks to the side and gets an idea upon spotting the stationary train cars. The hero realizes he can use the train to gain the height needed for the attack. With a determined gaze, he focuses on the train cars and formulates a new plan of attack. The young man realizes he can use the cars to reach the necessary height to attack. With this in mind, he prepares to use the trains as a launching platform. His partner asks what the plan is, and says the situation is getting too dangerous. Without explaining, the boy grabs the doll tightly. Startling the small creature, he then begins to run, saying his partner is coming with him to help with his strategy. With great agility, the hero leaps from one container to another to gain more height. Even at the top, his partner warns that he still can't reach the monster, and the boy agrees. The protagonist squeezes the cute creature and explains that this is why he needs a little extra help. Then, he launches his partner like a cannonball towards the dragon, who looks on, confused. Next, the young man activates a time and space magic and summons a magical chain. The chains attach themselves to the doll, which hangs in mid-air. Not understanding what's happening, the hero uses his partner as a trampoline and leaps to reach the giant beast in the sky. Seeing him approach, the dragon roars and prepares for an immediate counterattack. With a determined look, the boy recasts the spell to stop the creature before it can transform into poison. The magical chain fully forms and lunges towards the flying creature. With that, the magic binds the dragon, and the boy explains that he can only hold it for a few seconds, but assures that this short time is more than enough. With his sword glowing intensely, he prepares for the final blow against the monster. The attack strikes the beast's core head-on, causing a brilliant flash on impact with a focused gaze. The hero uses all his strength to destroy the enemy's weak point. The dragon's core begins to crack, under the pressure of the sword, and releases a purple energy. Suddenly, the chains of time and space shatter, freeing the giant creature. Even so, our protagonist doesn't give up, and continues to push the sword with all his might in the final moments. The beast roars in pain as its body begins to dissolve. Finally, the core shatters into several pieces, and the monster is defeated once and for all. A massive explosion occurs, and his partner is thrown to the ground. The young man's sword also can't withstand the pressure, and shatters after the final blow. Tired and breathless, the hero finally relaxes after the intense battle just concluded. Shortly after, a system message confirms that he has defeated the dangerous Chaos Dragon. Relieved, the boy carefully observes the rewards that appear before him. The system informs him that he has leveled up 15 times and gained over 800,000 credits. He also receives the Fang of the Chaos Dragon and a recommendation to rank up as an adventurer. His partner congratulates him on the victory and says that it expected as much, since they are the same person. But right after, the cute creature becomes furious and complains about being used as a springboard in the fight. The young man ignores his partner's scolding and focuses on the notifications that have appeared. With that, the system informs him that his space-time magic has leveled up 20 times and he has learned new skills. He also gained a new passive skill that increases his potential power by 50%. Despite its anger, the cute creature says it will forgive him because they averted a catastrophe. Suddenly, his partner hears the sound of sirens and realizes the police are arriving, saying they should get out of there. The protagonist agrees and says that no one can find out they were at the scene. The doll then jumps onto the boy's shoulder, who is surprised that they agreed on something. Without wasting any time, our hero jumps a fence to quickly escape the area. After fleeing, they finally reach a safe place to rest. In the apartment, the boy sits on the sofa with a bag of food in his hand. He opens the wrapping of a sandwich and seems to remember something important. With that, the young man asks his partner if it also needs to eat something. The doll sighs and asks how it would eat, being just a cloth doll. The boy retorts that common sense already told him a talking creature is strange enough. Then the boy gets an idea and stops eating his snack before the first bite. The boy gets up from the couch and leaves the cute creature there watching suspiciously. He then goes to the table and fills a glass with water for someone special. The young man places the glass in front of a photo frame and greets his deceased family. The creature complains and asks its companion not to joke around like that, so the hero turns and asks why he would do that. And the doll replies that they are the same person. His partner looks at the girl's photo and thinks that he shouldn't talk about Rhea right now. He decides that he'll tell the truth when the boy is stronger, as the time mage. At that moment, the boy remembers that they found a material to create a new weapon. A system notification appears and shows the Chaos Dragon's Fang as a reward. His partner remembers that his sword broke, so the timing is perfect for a new one. The creature tells him not to go to class the following day, as they are going to create a new weapon. The young man arrives at the Adventurers Guild and feels intimidated by the place. The boy is impressed by the size of the building. Meanwhile, his partner climbs onto his shoulder with a smug smile. The creature says he has it to thank for this. Later, the hero enters the building and thinks about going home as soon as he finishes what he needs to do. Inside the guild, a voice calls for adventurer number 23, and the boy realizes it's him. He goes to the receptionist and explains that he completed a dungeon and wants to verify the results, handing his card to the attendant. She thinks he looks too weak to be an adventurer, but with a professional smile, the woman agrees and says she will check his information. Then she takes the young man's ID card and prepares to look at the data. The woman inserts the card into a terminal, and his information appears on a holographic screen. The system begins to load all of the adventurer's data for the receptionist's reevaluation. Next, she asks him to place his hand on the screen to confirm his identity and check his rank. The hero obeys and places his hand on the screen, waiting for the machine to complete the verification. Suddenly, the attendant's eyes widen in utter shock at what appears on the display. She sees that his status went from 1 to 100 in a single day, and she can't believe it. Trembling, the woman wonders if the machine is malfunctioning or has a serious problem. The protagonist notices her reaction is drawing everyone's attention in the place. Not wanting any trouble, He decides to test his new material restoration ability with a smile. He calls out to the woman and says that the identity verification is complete. Confused, the attendant looks at the screen, which now shows the classification, and wonders what happened. The young man pretends to know nothing and asks the woman if there was a problem. Acting calm, the woman returns the card and says it was nothing, but she finds it all very strange. He takes the card back and thanks the attendant for her service. At the counter, the boy then reveals that he used his restoration magic to alter the system's screen. His partner praises him for the clever move, and the hero says he just avoided changing the future. In front of an elevator, he asks the doll which path he should take now. The cute little creature instructs him to take the elevator to reach the next destination. Inside the cabin, the boy waits patiently. As the elevator ascends to the correct floor, the doors open, and he steps out of the cubicle, finding himself in a new, mysterious hallway. Arriving at a door, he discovers that only A-rank adventurers can enter, but his partner assures him that this is not a problem and that he doesn't need to worry. The doll then transforms into a glowing card and falls into the protagonist's hand. Surprised, the young man wonders how it turned into a card, and the object tells him to use it. The boy hesitates, remembering that the reader is a security device, but the card insists. Without further delay, the boy touches the card to the security reader, which emits a beep. With the door open, the young man is excited to begin synthesizing his new weapon and a temporal item. At this moment, someone asks who he is, thinking it's a school trip. The young man faces the man who questioned him and prepares to answer his serious question. Calmly, he denies being on a school trip and says he came to synthesize a new weapon. Surprised by the answer, the scientist is speechless for a moment and stares at him doubtfully. Then he asks if the boy's adventurer rank is higher than A for him to be in there. We learn that this man is Tokimune Shiroyama, the director of the Tokimune Weapon Synthesis Institute. He scratches his head and says, the boy seems to be F rank, but couldn't have passed through security. At that moment, the hero's partner whispers for him to show the item he got earlier. The boy then explains that he obtained a rare material from an enemy and wants to strengthen his weapon. Curious, the director takes the object from the young man's hand to analyze it more carefully. Using a device on his eye, Tokimune examines the fang and says the material is good. Then the scientist asks if it was the boy himself who defeated the monster, and he confirms it. Satisfied with the answer, Tokimune agrees to help him and points to the center of the room. After getting permission, the laboratory floor begins to shake shortly after. A huge piece of machinery begins to rise from the ground right in front of them. The hero is impressed by the size of the machine that suddenly appeared there. The director said that this is the most modern and advanced synthesis machine in the country. He explains that the boy's material is new, and therefore wants to monitor the results. With that, the scientist allows him to use the equipment for free, and then leaves the room. His partner then offers to guide him through the process. Since the boy has never done it before, the hero thinks it's not surprising that he knows nothing about the synthesis procedure. After all, only students of rank B and above learn about this technique at the academy. The creature says that the first step is to choose the weapon for the process, which will be from the school immediately after. The second step consists of selecting the element to imbue the blade. A chart shows that the number of elements depends on the weapon's rank from F to S. The young man's sword is rank F, so it can only have one element slot. The third step is to reinforce the weapon with materials that can vary from gems to bones. The creature also comments that it is possible to fuse two different swords into one. In his case, the material will be the dragon's fang, and the final step is the fusion itself. The system will show the power and time of the fusion, and he prepares to start the process. The boy then declares that the weapon will be his sword and places it inside the synthesis machine. The machine's screen shows the element options, and his partner complains about the lack of variety. With no other choice, the creature tells him to select the light element, and the boy obeys the command. A compartment opens in the equipment, and the young man asks if he should place the material there. He inserts the dragon's fang into the machine. The hero asks about the fusion time, and his partner tells him to set the time for 3 years. Shocked, the boy screams that it's a joke and that he can't wait that long. His companion tells him to stop complaining, and the young man reluctantly accepts the order. The machine then informs that the synthesis has begun and that the weapon will be ready in 3 years. Suddenly, the glowing card flies from the boy's hand, and he screams desperately for it to stop. Ignoring the plea, the object slides into a secret compartment in the machine. With that, an intense blue light envelops the equipment, and the young man wonders what is happening. The glow explodes in a blinding flash, and the system thanks the boy for his patience. A notification appears and reveals that the synthesis is complete, and the Sword of Chaos has been created. back in the laboratory. The hero holds his new sword, and his partner warns that this was an exception at that moment. The director seems shocked and screams, asking how the synthesis finished in just a few seconds. Desperate, Tokimune fiddles with a holographic screen trying to understand what happened. The creature tells him to run, while the man is distracted, and the young man sheathes his new weapon. The boy thanks for everything and leaves. As the scientist shouts for him to wait while leaving the building, the hero overhears two people discussing the recent news. One of them mentions the unknown, and the young man stops for a moment to listen to the conversation. The man says that the unknown defeated the dragon alone, and that he is a monster rookie. His friend says the clans will fight to recruit him, and the protagonist continues on his way. An adventurer dreams of being recruited by the Rumika clan, but his colleague scoffs at the idea. The hero is confused by the situation, and decides it's better to just go home and rest. But the cute creature appears and says they must go to a dungeon to test the new sword. With a smile, the doll reveals that they are going to the Divine Beast's dungeon. Cerberus. Then an image of the three-headed beast appears, and the ground begins to shake. The protagonist is stunned by the suggestion and asks if his partner really said Cerberus. The next day, at the academy, his friend Rini comes running and calls out the hero's name. The girl ignores another student and cries with relief to see her friend is alive and well, gasping for breath. The young woman says she heard that the monster that invaded the school had attacked him. The young woman said she was worried because he hadn't read her messages or come to class. Angrily, she yells that she was incredibly worried, and the protagonist asks what she is doing there. The young woman says she should be the one asking that, and that she came to ask to go to a dungeon. The boy understands and comments that it's no surprise. After all, she is the best mage of the second year. On his shoulder, the creature tells him to stop giving out information and to move on, and the young man agrees. Wiping her tears, the girl smiles and says she is happy that he is safe. The hero then apologizes for making his friend so worried about him. Suddenly, the student notices the creature on his shoulder and asks what that doll is. The young woman's eyes sparkle, and she is mesmerized by the little thing's cuteness, not even waiting for an answer. The young woman grabs the doll and asks if she can hold it for a moment. The girl then smells the plushie. She comments that its scent is comforting for some reason, and she hugs the boy's partner tightly. The young man finds the scene a bit strange. The hero then says she can take it home, and the student is surprised by the offer. The boy tells her to take it home and return it later, and the doll becomes desperate. The student thanks him profusely and hugs the creature tightly while blushing with happiness. The young woman says goodbye to her friend and leaves, waving with the plushie in her hands. The hero tells his partner not to get upset. He says the girl would return it quickly, but the creature becomes furious and shouts, "That's not the point," hitting the young man on the back. Nevertheless, the doll grabs the boy's clothes and seems to want to say something important. He reveals that, thanks to this, he was reunited with his childhood friend, whom he lost 10 years ago. The partner thanks the protagonist for helping him find his old friend again. The young man says that he's happy to hear that. He continues on his way with his friend on his shoulder. Meanwhile, the white-haired boy observes everything from a distance. Fiddling with his phone, he murmurs that this boy must be that Nate, the germ. With a dark look and a smirk, he hopes the mysterious dragon slayer will be fun to face. The scene shifts to the student guidance office, where someone appears to be waiting. At the desk, a person slams their hand on some papers and asks if what they've heard is true. A gem on their uniform gleams as the person continues their question in a tone of disbelief. The girl with glasses introduces herself as Yuki, the vice president, and questions him about the event. The protagonist confirms his version of the story, and the girl eyes him suspiciously from across her desk. Yuki picks up some papers and says a violent dragon invaded the school 2 days ago. She continues, saying that several witnesses saw a monster flying in the direction he was running. The young man makes up a story about the dragon chasing another student, and how he barely escaped with his life. He then excuses himself to go to class, but the vice president asks him to wait a moment. As he leaves the room, our hero wonders why everyone suspects him. His partner shows him a phone and says the answer to your question is right there on the screen. A news post reports that the Dragon Slayer saved Tokyo from the recent crisis. Many people are commenting in shock, and calling the mysterious savior the city's hero. The boy then asks if the creature can delete the post, using space-time magic. The puppet replies that with his current abilities, that is impossible. The young man understands and sighs. He enters the classroom, and his eyes widen at the sight before him. All the students start whispering amongst themselves as soon as they see him, commenting that he's finally here. Our protagonist recalls how his classmates always avoided him, but he notices that for some reason, the atmosphere in the classroom is different today. At that moment, Rina runs in and says there's an emergency. The same figure from before appears and tells her to stop. The white-haired boy introduces himself as Hugo Sterling, the council president. He then repeats his name and introduces himself as the student council president. With his red eyes shining, the president says he came to challenge our hero to a duel of magic. At this moment, all the students in the class begin to whisper about the council president's challenge. A group of students comments among themselves that this whole situation is completely insane, but one states that the newcomer can't use spells because he has no magical elements. Another then remembers that even so, the boy shattered the magic measurement device. The device also had traces of unidentified materials, and our hero grows concerned. He also shows a post about a mysterious dragon slayer saving Tokyo from a crisis. The white-haired boy then accuses the young man of defeating the monster alone and finishing off the Chaos Dragon. Famous for its extremely violent nature, the protagonist is stunned, and the president reveals that he finds him a very intriguing person. With a confident smile, he says he finds the rookie a very interesting figure, and that's why he needs to finish the boy off before he becomes a bigger problem. With a smile, the president reveals to the class that he has also defeated a dragon once, so he proposes a duel to decide which of them deserves the title of Dragon Slayer. He explains that the magic duel is a system for students to measure their strength. The hierarchies in the academy are defined by the results, and the best students even get privileges. Furthermore, after graduation, they can become officers in the Adventurers Guild. The only rule in duels is not to use spells that cause irreversible or fatal damage. Lower-ranked students can challenge higher-ranked ones, who are required to accept. Upon hearing this, the hero realizes that since he has a low rank, he can refuse, and thinks it would be madness to accept. At that moment, the president warns Rini that she should choose her friends more wisely. The white-haired boy then says that, in her next private tutoring session, he will make sure she learns a lesson she'll never forget, and that he will teach it to her without holding anything back. The girl is shocked. With a malicious smile, he says he will also teach her the secret to getting into the council. The girl clenches her fist and says she is looking forward to his guidance. In this situation, both the protagonist and his friend look quite upset. The hero clutches the brooch on his uniform and calls out to the president. The protagonist stands up and faces the white-haired boy who challenged him. He then tells his rival he wants to talk about the magic duel, and states that he accepts the council president's challenge. Upon hearing this, the hero's friend is shocked and worried by the young man's decision. The young man then says he accepts the duel, but that he has one condition for the fight. The president finds this amusing and asks if he really wants to impose a condition. The protagonist points to his rival and says that the loser must leave the academy. The white-haired boy gives a sinister smile at his opponent's audacity. He accepts the condition and warns him that it's now too late for regrets. Our hero then stares him down with a serious gaze, full of confidence in his victory. Afterwards, his partner praises the young man's attitude for standing up to Ryuga like that. The creature then says that the protagonist is starting to become more like him, but the hero knows Ryuga is strong and asks if his friend knows anything else about him. The doll makes a serious face as it knows very well who the council president is. It reveals that in the future, Ryuga becomes the manager of the Shinjuku Adventurers Guild, and after developing new fire magic, he becomes one of the 7 great mages. The hero asks if he becomes a sage. His friend confirms that the rival's personality is trash. The creature says he will use his power to take advantage of several female students at the academy. The partner also reveals that he is very good at creating factions of followers at school. Then the doll adds that, on top of everything, the president also has a natural talent for magic. The creature explains that there's a good reason everyone calls him a genius mage. Because of all this, the partner warns that the young man cannot defeat him in his current state. The little creature tells the boy to check his stats to see his progress. With that, a screen displays the attributes of Arthur Kenway, who was at level 15 as a swordsman. Looking at the stats, the creature comments that he has grown a lot since the beginning, but even so, the partner starts toying with the protagonist's attribute screen. He then compares them with the rival's attributes, and the hero is shocked and can't believe his eyes. The screen shows that Ryuga is at level 78 and is A-class, making him 10 times stronger. The hero can't believe he can see the attributes of others and realizes the massive power gap. In the distance, the boy sees 2 female students, one of them crying, while her friend comforts her. The crying girl desperately asks what she should do now. The student said she can no longer use magic and is going to fail the mage course. Her friend doesn't understand, as she used the staff and cast the spells correctly without making any mistakes. The girl then wonders if she should take private lessons with Mr. Ryuga to fix this. Hearing this, the hero is shocked, and the girl's friend agrees that she should accept. Then the other student says she believes the private lessons will solve the problem soon. Our boy remembers the rival's wicked smile, and him saying that it all ends quickly with the female students, and that it's all over if the girl just closes her eyes and follows his orders. At this, the hero clenches his fist in rage and asks to speak with the two of them for a minute. The two look back, confused, not understanding what the boy wants with them. Now walking toward them, the girl's friend recognizes him as that guy from the swordsman course. The protagonist then, he steps in front of the two young women with a serious and determined expression. He says that the girl doesn't need his lessons, and that he will solve her problem himself. The hero extends his hand to the young woman who is surprised by his sudden action. He concentrates and remembers something he learned in his class on measuring magical elements. The young man then uses his power to see how the magical elements are moving. With this, the boy realizes that her magic circuit is blocked from overuse, so all the protagonist needs to do is remove the defective piece. And with that, the flow of the girl's magical elements will begin to function normally again. He then asks the young woman not to make too much noise. While he helps with her problem, the protagonist extends his hand toward the student, who is very confused by this. The hero's hand then begins to glow, with a very intense blue energy. He then pokes the young woman several times, and her friend worriedly shouts her name, then asks him what he is doing. But the young man just tells the girl to use her magic. Her friend asks if she is okay, and the student confirms that nothing happened. The girl then puts her hands together, and a green energy begins to form between them. Then a great wave of magic envelops the two, who are surprised by the result. The young woman cries out happily, because now she can use her magic spells again. Her friend realizes that she has become even stronger than before with his help. With a huge smile, the student looks very happy and relieved about what happened. She then thanks our hero profusely, who says it was nothing for him. The young woman cries with happiness, and says that now she won't need Ryuga's lessons. At this, the protagonist remembers the threat his rival made to his friend Rini. Later, our hero walks through the academy and gets his partner's attention with a tap on the shoulder. The boy then asks the creature what he can do to get stronger. He explains that there are only 3 days left until his duel against the council president, and he wants to close the power gap by asking for the most efficient dungeon to train in. The creature smiles and says it was waiting for this, and had already gotten a map in advance for our hero. He then asks what rewards he will receive there. His partner reveals that the dungeon will grant a large amount of experience points, and that on top of that, he will also gain a new space-time spell. The creature says it will also be his chance to test the new weapon he synthesized, and that he will also acquire a summon, leaving our hero very excited. The hero was the one who suggested going to the dungeon, but now he's a little apprehensive. Facing an army of monsters, he wonders how he's going to defeat them all alone. His partner teases him and asks if this situation doesn't put him back in the game. The protagonist agrees and thanks him as his hand begins to glow with energy. The creature warns him not to lose, and the confident young man replies that he won't. He then charges towards the horde of enemies, vowing to defeat everyone in the dungeon. With his eyes glowing, the boy shouts that he will defeat them, and the scene shifts to 1 hour later. Elsewhere, we see a group of adventurers fighting near a large elevator. One of them tries to attack a monster, but his sword shatters upon impact. A mage from the group tells him to get out of the way, and prepares to cast a spell with her staff. She then unleashes a powerful blast of flames at the crystal knight. With a confident smile, the young woman asks what the enemy thought of her magic attack. To everyone's surprise, the monster emerges from the smoke without a scratch. The status screen reveals it's a black crystal knight, immune to magic and resistant to physical damage. The group is terrified because their attacks don't work, and they find the situation hopeless. Then the knight prepares a powerful attack against the adventurers. The two of them cringe in fear, awaiting the enemy's final blow, which never comes. But what they hear is only the sound of metal clashing hard against metal. The boy from the group looks at the scene, not understanding what is happening. He is shocked to see that the attack was blocked by someone else. At that moment, a blade strikes the knight's head. Suddenly, our hero appears and delivers a powerful blow to the crystal monster. The enemy then explodes into several pieces, and the group of adventurers is surprised. They realize they are alive, and they thank the young man for saving them from death. The protagonist warns that there are many monsters in the dungeon, and that they should leave soon. The boy asks what will happen to him, and our hero tells them to go on ahead. Meanwhile, he will stay behind and hold off the approaching enemies. The young man turns to the horde of knights and tells the adventurers to go. The group apologizes for the trouble and thanks him once again for his help. His partner then informs him that that was monster number 89. The creature says he's not even halfway to his goal, and the hero agrees. He says he will finish things quickly and level up without holding back. The protagonist wields his sword, prepared for battle. He then charges forward, agilely cutting down several crystal monsters in his path. His partner points out that these enemies give the most experience in the dungeon, making them perfect for the young man to level up quickly. But the creature warns that at the boy's current level, these enemies are too strong. At that moment, the swordsman's eyes glow with an intense blue energy. Suddenly, chains of energy erupt from the ground and bind all the enemies. The partner explains that with the Sword of Chaos, the outcome of the fight can change because the blade is charged with the light element, which is very powerful. Thus, the hero can easily cut down all the crystal monsters. The creature confirms that the boy is already strong enough to fight them. He lands in front of an army of monsters and wants to defeat several of them as the young man concentrates energy in his feet, preparing to advance on the horde, but he changes his mind and says he will not take down just a few, but all of them. With his determination renewed, one of the monsters lunges to attack him. With that, the boy manages to defend himself from the monster's multiple attacks. His eyes glow with blue energy as he prepares for the attack, even while felling several enemies. He seems surprised by their numbers. After the battle, he stands amidst the wreckage of the crystal monsters. Tired and panting, he sees an even larger enemy appearing before him. A screen shows that the Black Crystal General has very high attributes. His partner then warns him that this monster has boss-level attributes. The swordsman charges forward, and his blade collides with the giant monsters. The young man realizes he needs to act before the monster's power defeats him. He then decides he needs to use the element of his sword to win. With that, the boy dodges the powerful vertical attack launched by the general. The dark energy in his hand concentrates, preparing the counterattack. He positions himself behind the enemy, taking advantage of the opening to attack, with his eyes glowing. He prepares to deliver the final blow with his sword. He takes down the giant monster with a powerful blow, and precise. Even after the victory, the hero is panting, and his partner calls his attention. Suddenly, an explosion hurls him away, and he complains that he is too busy. The creature then begins to explain that space-time magic is very different. Its power does not depend on magical elements, but on things that control time. It reveals that the protagonist uses the chrono element, and that is why he can use magic. The young man complains about the timing, but his friend says that fighting is the best time to learn. At this moment, more crystal monsters advance on him. To continue the combat, the boy uses his energy chains once more to bind all the enemies. As he takes down the monsters, the creature warns him to never lower his guard. Then, before him, new hooded monsters appear in the dark dungeon. A screen reveals that they are black crystal sorcerers, with high magic resistance. The sorcerers begin to charge a powerful purple sphere of energy together. At that moment, his partner reminds the young man that he is a space-time mage, and that even in the midst of combat, he can learn and dodge the sorcerer's attacks. He instructs him to focus his consciousness on the chronological element. Without pause, with wide eyes, the hero concentrates as he faces the magical attack. The creature shouts for the young man to take control of the flow of time immediately. With that, the boy's eyes glow with blue energy and a magical pattern. The sorcerer's magic then unleashes a massive explosion in the middle of the dungeon, but the protagonist manages to protect himself. Using a blue energy shield, he blocks one of the crystal monsters. The young man then advances. He extends his hand and prepares to cast his own magic as blue energy begins to concentrate in his palm. As a counterattack, he fires a powerful beam of energy, hitting all the enemies in the room. After the dust settles, all the monsters in the dungeon have been completely defeated. The boy looks at his hand and wonders if this is what it means to use the flow of time. With a smile, the creature confirms that the boy's thought is correct. His partner thinks he is more talented than expected, having used the space-time bullet. With this immense power, the hero's attack pierces through the dungeon's armored defenses. Even after his victory, the hero stands on a mountain of defeated monsters, leaning on his sword. He is panting and visibly tired from the battle when several notification screens appear in front of him. The screens announce he has leveled up, and with his energy renewed, he suddenly asks where his next target is. The B-rank dungeon boss appears, and it is the divine beast Cerberus. The three-headed monster then glares at him. With a fierce growl and glowing eyes, the protagonist faces the B-rank dungeon boss, the divine beast Cerberus. His partner then explains that this boss has a sense of dignity and integrity, unusual for monsters. Even so, the creature warns him not to let his guard down against the beast under any circumstances. A screen confirms that the enemy is the sacred beast, Cerberus, the B-rank dungeon boss. His partner compares the beast to a samurai. Saying that it possesses the soul of a warrior, our hero seems to feel a strong pressure coming from the monster. He is a little breathless, and Cerberus's eye glows intensely as it watches every move of the young man before it. Seeing his condition, the creature offers him a potion and says it will make him feel a little better. The protagonist agrees and takes the potion, preparing to drink it and recover his strength. The three-headed beast just watches him, and the boy wonders if it is waiting for him to recover. Faced with the monster's attitude, the protagonist stands still in front of it, moved by the enemy's honor. The hero says that this is a very strange dungeon boss. As the potion takes effect, his partner points out an old wound on the monster and tells the boy to aim his attack there. He feels the beast's intimidating aura return and says he understands. He realizes that the monster was really waiting. He feels indebted to it. Cerberus's tail glows intensely as it prepares to begin the fight. With ferocity, the three-headed beast charges forward towards the boy to attack him with all its might. The monster strikes with its claws, but the young man manages to dodge the blow. Deadly with a tris, his eyes shining, he uses time-space magic to move at high speed. The boy approaches and points his sword directly at the old wound, which is the weak point. He confirms that this is the scar his partner mentioned, and concentrates all his power on that weak spot. The creature advances against the protagonist even as he raises his sword. The protagonist, seeing a bite approaching, protects himself with his blade. One of the creature's heads bites the sword with force to halt our hero's advance. Sparks fly everywhere as the two continue to test their strengths. In a great stalemate, seeing an opening, he uses the enemy's head as support to jump and reposition himself in the fight with agility. The protagonist soars over Cerberus to try a new angle of attack, but one of the heads turns and unleashes a powerful breath attack in his direction. Seeing the danger, his partner shouts desperately for him to dodge that energy attack with no time to react. The energy attack hits the boy head-on, causing an explosion. However, he uses time-space magic, and what the beast hits is merely an image from the past. Irritated, the protagonist concentrates his energy and prepares for a powerful counterattack. His hand shines intensely, and he strikes the old scar of Cerberus directly with his magic. With a shout of power, the boy releases all his energy directly at the monster's weak point. Upon being hit squarely, it roars in pain, feeling the devastating impact of the magical attack. After the strike, the hero lands. While the beast holds the blade in its mouth, his partner is confused by the young man's actions and doesn't understand what happened at that moment. The creature then remembers the technique he used on the student to heal, its magical circuits. With that, the monster's wound begins to glow with blue energy and heals completely. The protagonist reveals that he healed the beast because he wants to fight his opponent fairly. Completely shocked, the puppet screams that he has completely lost his mind and will die, but the boy explains that it is necessary to return the respect he received even from a monster in a gesture of honor. The three-headed beast throws the sword back to the young man with precision. His partner is shocked and comments that the enemy returned the boy's weapon as an equal. With the debt paid, Cerberus now faces the protagonist. However, the protagonist refuses the sword and says he won't need it for the fight. With that, the young man clenches his fists. Preparing to fight without his weapon, he takes a combat stance and declares this isn't about leveling up or defeating a boss. With a determined gaze, he declares that this is just a real fight. The monster seems to understand the challenge, facing him with equal respect from a distance. His partner doesn't understand a thing, wondering what on earth is happening. Without wasting a moment, the protagonist charges forward and lands a powerful punch on Cerberus, but he realizes the impact wasn't as strong as he expected. In response, the three-headed beast strikes him. With a powerful and precise attack, our young hero is hurled violently against a crystal wall. However, the protagonist manages to recover, landing swiftly on the crystal. He counterattacks the beast with a powerful leap towards Cerberus, landing a heavy punch on its face. The mighty blow strikes one of Cerberus's heads, which seems to reel from the impact. But it doesn't give up and lunges for a bite, its jaws clamping down on the protagonist's entire arm. He feels the searing pain, gritting his teeth from the sheer effort of surviving the attack. The beast then thrashes him around violently, and the protagonist screams in agony. Seeing this, his partner becomes frantic with worry, screaming his name in utter desperation. After being thrown against the crystal, the protagonist winces in pain as his partner tells him to pull himself together. The beast's three heads begin to charge a powerful, combined energy attack. The protagonist's eye glows intensely as he calmly states that he already knows what to do next. He declares that he will pour all of his strength into this one final attack to defeat one of Cerberus's heads. One head fires a powerful golden energy beam toward him, causing a massive explosion of light. The blast fills the entire dungeon chamber, engulfing everything in its energy. The protagonist braces himself, concentrating all of his energy for the final blow against the monster. The young man hopes his body can withstand the power he is about to unleash, then charges forward with a battle cry. Releasing all his energy at once, the protagonist lunges forward and unleashes a flurry of powerful punches against the beast. but the monster retaliates, sending him flying with a blow that injures his arm. Despite the pain, the young man glares at his enemy with a look filled with hatred and determination. The three-headed beast roars and lunges with its claws, ready to end the fight. At that moment, the protagonist concentrates all his energy into his fist, preparing for the attack. With his eyes glowing intensely, he unleashes all his strength in a single roar. He lands another devastating punch on one of the creature's heads, and the beast screams in pain. Reeling from the impact, he leaps into the air, facing the monster's three heads as he prepares for his final blow. With a determined look, he shouts that this will be the end of the line for the creature. A massive explosion of blue energy erupts and completely swallows the monster. After the dust settles, we see the protagonist standing and his enemy fallen. The young man then reflects, wondering if he's always been like this in battles. With a sigh, he concludes that he always has been. A blockhead who acts without thinking. A system window appears, confirming he has cleared the B-rank dungeon. Suddenly, he wakes up, and a familiar voice asks if he's finally awake. Opening his eyes slowly, he seems unable to comprehend what happened in that place. His partner then looks at him, very worried, waiting for the young man's response as he sits on the floor. He says that he somehow managed to defeat the powerful enemy. A screen reveals that he leveled up 20 times. He wonders what else he gained. The system shows that he received a cape, and the young man decides to try it on later. But suddenly, the hero notices something strange and wears a shocked expression. To his shock, the creature is standing before him once again. The sight of the creature on its feet leaves the protagonist stunned. But to his surprise, the beast now looks like a cute and friendly puppy. Completely confused, the protagonist is left speechless by the monster's transformation. The creature now looks at him with a docile expression and even wags its tail happily. Even without understanding, he decides to approach and extend his hand to the three-headed beast. With that, he pets the monster's head, which seems to enjoy it greatly. The entity says that the beast has taken a liking to him. The protagonist questions if this is really the boss. His partner says it was unexpected, but he received the reward nonetheless. The protagonist then asks if the prize was the equipment, but the entity immediately denies it. With that, he reveals that the reward is the sacred beast itself, Cerberus, the ultimate prize of the dungeon. The entity advises that to form the contract, he must feed the beast his blood. Without a second thought, the protagonist cuts his finger, offering his blood to the creature. He then presents it to one of the beast's mouths. A screen confirms that the beast is now his familiar, and his partner says they have achieved their goal. 3 days later, at the Adventurers Academy, someone points to a figure in the courtyard. The students look at our hero and whisper amongst themselves, wondering if it's really him. With a bandage on his face, the young man walks with a serious and determined gaze. Suddenly, his friend Rina spots him from a distance and shouts his name. She runs up to him and asks where he's been. She couldn't get in contact with him. The protagonist explains that he went through some special training for the duel against the president. The girl is extremely worried. She wonders what he did to get so injured. Our hero confidently states that one way or another, he is ready for the fight. Seeing this attitude, the girl wonders if he's the same friend she once knew so well. The young man appears calm and far more confident than usual from a distance. The council president watches and thinks with a malicious smile that the rookie had fled in fear. He thinks his rival only came to show how pathetic he is. Then the white-haired boy and his followers approach them in the school hallway. He then announces to everyone that the duel will happen right after class today. Tauntingly, the president asks if he is prepared and calls him Dragon Slayer. Without hesitation, our hero faces his rival and confirms that he is more than ready. The president then asks if he has forgotten the stupid condition he proposed. The protagonist confirms that the loser of the fight will have to leave this school forever. To this, the rival says that is not enough, and the young man asks what he means. The white-haired boy then holds out his hand, ready to show off. He proposes adding 100 million credits to the bet to make it more fun. Hearing this, our protagonist is completely shocked by the absurd amount. The other students start to pressure the protagonist to accept the bet. Watching everything, his partner realizes the council president's ploy. The creature understands that the rival is using the other students to provoke the young man. With this, it concludes that his opponent is as cunning as he always was in the future. The rival then declares that he will take everything the protagonist owns. At that moment, with a wicked grin, he adds that he will turn him into his slave. His friend tries to intervene, but the young man stops her and accepts the 100 million bet. The council president smiles, satisfied with his opponent's response. He then says his goodbyes, saying he is looking forward to their magic duel later. Before leaving, he turns to the girl and threatens her about her private lesson. The young woman is left completely speechless. and terrified by the president's threat. Seeing her reaction, our hero turns and tells her not to worry. With a confident smile, he assures his friend that he will definitely win the fight after days of intense training in the dungeon. Our young man has prepared well for this duel. Later, after class, the protagonist walks down the hallway. The moment of the duel finally approaches, but suddenly, he stops and looks to the side with a very confused expression. Then, a group of bullies appears, and their leader invites him to play a little before the fight. One of the guys reveals that they each get 1 million credits if they take him out. The protagonist hears the threat, but remains calm and shows no reaction. The aggressors ask if he is scared and say that crying will not help. Ignoring the taunts, our hero whispers that this is a huge relief for him. Completely confused by the response, the bullies don't understand the situation. He says that he's relieved to know his rival uses such cliché and predictable tricks. With that, he warns them that they'll be the first to receive their share of the reward. Furious at his audacity, the leader of the attackers points his sword and calls him a bastard. The bully yells at the young man not to get too cocky because of this attitude. With a cold gaze and eyes glowing blue, the protagonist prepares to counterattack. In the blink of an eye, he rushes forward and knocks the bully to the ground with a single blow. With glowing eyes, he faces the rest of the group without showing any fear. Then he stands up and says it's a pain to have to deal with all of them at once. Meanwhile, in the arena, the rival complains that the Dragon Slayer still hasn't shown up, so he asks the judge if he can win by default if his opponent doesn't arrive. His followers say the rookie was a fool, and probably ran away in fear of him. Smiling, the president thinks that his henchmen have already taken care of the protagonist. In the stands, the hero's friend looks very worried about his disappearance. But suddenly, someone in the crowd shouts that the challenger has finally arrived. At this moment, the president and his followers turn around shocked, not believing what they're seeing. Completely surprised, the rival asks what the hell the young man is doing there. The hero replies that there's nothing strange, as they had scheduled a duel. Speechless, the council president points at the protagonist, not knowing what to say. Back at the school, all the bullies are on the ground, completely defeated. With a serious look, the protagonist says they can finally start the fight. He turns to the judge and asks him to give the signal to begin the duel. The judge announces that the student from Class 3 must take his position for the duel. Next, he introduces the student from Class 2, Kujo Haruto. With both fighters in their positions, the judge finally gives the signal. To begin, the council president grinds his teeth in anger for being humiliated earlier. He then says he doesn't know how the rookie did it, but he will defeat him. With a clenched fist, he prepares to show his full power in the fight. In response, his opponent shouts that he's going all out from the very beginning. A huge wave of fire erupts from him and rushes towards our hero. Walking through the flames, the president looks very confident of victory. With a malicious smile, he asks if his opponent is ready for what's coming. Our hero watches as a screen reveals that he is using an advanced fire spell. Without wasting any time, the president charges forward and unleashes a powerful flame attack. He thinks that he didn't hold back, and if the blow lands, will be the end of his rival, but the protagonist remains calm and his eyes glow with a blue energy. His opponent continues to concentrate his flames to ensure the blow lands. He realizes that the flames create a distortion in the flow of time as they advance, giving him an opening. The young man dodges the fireball that passes by him without any trouble. The protagonist continues to move and escapes several explosions, his face showing an impressive calm as another blow flies past him. Using his magic, the hero creates an afterimage to deceive his opponent. The council president is shocked and yells that this is impossible. The young man steps onto the scorched ground without a single scratch. Showing his superiority, the protagonist notices something strange after landing. He then leaps high into the arena. Just as he suspected, a pillar of fire erupts from the ground. Fortunately, the protagonist had sensed it beforehand. His rival can't believe that even his trap attack, double trap, failed. The president is stunned as the hero concentrates his blue energy. He then uses his chrono ray ability and fires a massive beam of energy. The attack hits the president head-on, slamming him into the arena floor. The crowd is in shock, and they wonder how someone without magic could do that. With a big smile, his friend says that what she just witnessed was incredible. She thinks she already knew it, and that he is no longer the same Haruto from before. As he steps into the arena, the protagonist asks if he wasn't going to fight all out from the start. Already back on his feet, the president glares at the protagonist, badly injured but with a furious look. The protagonist's rival seems to be infuriated by the situation. He then screams in rage and unleashes an enormous amount of flames around himself. His partner explains that this spell involves direct attacks, with flames of 3,000 degrees, but our hero calmly faces the attack and begins to manipulate the flames with his hand. The president screams that the spell burns everything it touches and that he will be turned to ash. The protagonist rushes forward and kicks his rival's leg to unbalance him in the duel. He then grabs Ryuga's arm, pinning him to the ground. With the president down, the protagonist prepares to land a blow to his face. With a look of shock, the hero's rival seems to fear the strike. However, showing mercy, the protagonist lands the blow just to the side of the president's face. Our protagonist then calmly says that he managed to extinguish the flames from the attack. Furious, the president points at the young man and calls him trash, who is bound to fail. With that, the rival turns to his followers and asks if they know what to do. With their hands glowing, the president's followers chant his name and agree to help. With that, a large fire symbol forms above the president as he absorbs their magic. The president smiles as he receives the power, and a voice from the future declares it's a violation of the rules. Our hero then asks how much power he needs from others to fight the protagonist's rival. He just gives a malicious laugh as his hair suddenly bursts into flames. His feet begin to transform into dragon claws with his secret technique. As a fiery aura envelops the president, the attack then explodes into a massive pillar of flames that soars to the arena's ceiling. Seeing the power of the magic, the young man is shocked and cannot believe his eyes. The flames begin to take the form of a massive fire dragon before him. The fire creature is a summon, and the protagonist knows he cannot win through normal means. Even so, the protagonist confronts the creature, saying he already knows he can't fight it normally. In front of the enormous fire dragon, the creature launches a flame attack against the protagonist. With an impressive leap, he manages to dodge the creature's powerful attack. He then fires a beam of blue energy from his hand to counterattack the fire monster. With his eyes wide, the hero can't believe what just happened. The fire monster took no damage, and the young man realizes his attack was completely useless. The flaming creature prepares to strike again, aiming to end the duel once and for all. The massive dragon advances, cornering the protagonist. Retreating from the flames, he finds himself completely surrounded by the enemy's fire. Backed against the wall, he has nowhere to flee. The young man then realizes he has nowhere left to run. He is completely trapped, as the massive fire creature surrounds him on all sides to prevent his escape. But with his eyes glowing blue, the protagonist seems to have a new plan in mind. He then notices something strange in a part of the flow of time within the monster. The protagonist realizes it's like a crack or fissure in the flow of time. With this, he thinks that if he can widen this fissure, he might have a chance to win. The fire dragon attacks with its giant claw, smashing the ground, but a blue light shines right in the palm of the creature's claw, suddenly surprising everyone. The hero appears, enveloped in blue energy, and stops the dragon's attack. He leaps away, and we see that he used an after-image from the past to escape the blow. Holding his sword, the protagonist asks his partner to let him use the stuffed animal again. The cute little creature appears, and complains that he's going to do it again, but ultimately agrees. The protagonist grabs his partner, who has a look of complete despair on its face. He then throws the creature, which glows with blue energy and an angry face. The protagonist slams his hand on the ground, using a chain ability to bind his partner in mid-air. With that, he uses the puppet as an anchor to swing himself and gain momentum. With a concentrated gaze, the young man prepares to attack the fire monster with everything he has. The hero then rushes at high speed towards the flaming creature to attack. With his eyes glowing intensely, he focuses on the weak spot he found in the enemy. He then realizes that this is the fissure in the flow of time that he had seen earlier in the duel. With a shout, the protagonist readies his sword to strike the creature's weak spot. He then unleashes a powerful blow that slices the fire dragon in half with his blade. The protagonist lands safely. As the monster dissolves into dark flames, the president is shocked to see his attack defeated. Not understanding what happened, the desperate council president pulls at his hair. Not understanding what the hell happened, he yells that it's impossible, and that as long as the followers are chanting, the magic regenerates infinitely. The president approaches and asks why the magic didn't regenerate. The president continues to scream that this defies all known magical principles. Our protagonist lands a powerful punch on his arrogant opponent's chest. From the blow, the white-haired boy falls to the ground, completely defeated and powerless. The professor supervising the duel is shocked. The protagonist asks for the result of the fight, so he announces that the winner of the duel is our hero, Kujo Haruto. We then see Rini and her friends at a party where she has gathered everyone to celebrate. They then throw confetti and congratulate our hero on his victory in the duel. A little embarrassed by the celebration, our hero can only thank everyone. The girl then hands him a glass and asks him to do the honors. The young man then sits at the table with the girls, who look at him expectantly. He looks at the glass and agrees to make a toast to get the celebration started. With that, everyone raises their glasses and toasts together with great happiness. The students continue the party, drinking and eating the snacks on the table. One of the girls then says she's relieved that the president is leaving the school. The others agree, complaining that he was a horrible and very abusive guy. One of them hugs Winnie and says she barely escaped the president's clutches. Suddenly, a classmate asks the hero what happened with the 100 million from the bet. The protagonist takes a sip of his drink. Then, he puts the glass on the table and admits that he completely forgot about the bet. The girls are completely shocked, and they shout that it was a huge waste. The protagonist calmly explains that he was never interested in the prize money. Upon hearing this, the girls get hearts in their eyes, and they think his attitude is cool. Then, one of the students calls him by name, wanting to ask something important. She then asks about his relationship with Rin, leaving him baffled by the sudden question as his friend spits out her drink in shock. Stunned by the situation, the young woman yells at her friend, asking what on earth she is talking about. Her friend explains that he picked a fight with the top student in the academy, and it was all because of her. Hearing this, the other girls gather around and ask again about the relationship between the two of them. Pressured by the students, Rin is at a loss for words and starts to stammer, seeing his confused reaction. The young women close in on her, waiting for an answer, leaving her with no escape. He suddenly stands up and makes an excuse about needing to use the restroom to get away. Watching him leave, the girls comment that he managed to escape their questioning. One of the girls remarks that he seems to have changed, that he looks more mature now. Rin then recalls that ever since that day, her friend had always been there for her. She remembers when they were children, and he protected her from a giant, ferocious creature. In the flashback, we see the young boy protecting his friend with nothing but a simple wooden stick. Back in the present, Rin holds her cup and thinks that things have always been this way. With a blush on her face, the girl remembers that now, they even share a secret. She remembers how he saved her in the dungeon on that dark night. The young woman recalls the moment her friend defeated the monster with his power. She then recalls how the protagonist stood before her after saving her from danger. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, our hero is washing his hands, thinking about the party. He then gets a message from Rin, apologizing for all the questions. Reading the message, the protagonist gives a slight smile at her concern, looking at his reflection in the mirror. He thinks to himself that he hasn't felt so alive in a long time. With that thought, he grips the sink more firmly. He remembers his family and how he thought he would never have happy moments again. The young man then wonders if the future can truly be changed by his actions. Suddenly, the creature on his shoulder calls out his name, trying to get his attention. Irritated, the boy turns and tells his partner to stay quiet until they get home. The creature warns him that it's an emergency, and the young man is confused by the statement from his future self. Then, in a serious tone, it says that the time has finally come. The protagonist turns and asks what the hell his partner is talking about. The entity then says it is going to tell him the real reason it is there with him. With that, it reveals that the hero's younger sister, who was supposedly dead, is actually alive. An image of his sister flashes through his mind. Completely shocked, the protagonist can't believe what he has just heard. He remembers that his sister, Leah, passed away in an accident a long time ago. But the doll explains that she isn't alive in the world he's in. The creature then tells him to prepare immediately for what's to come. With a determined look, the entity declares that the two of them will save her together. We then see some flashbacks of the protagonist's childhood with his sister. With a big smile, the young girl showed him the red scarf she had just made. Curious, the protagonist asked if it was Ria herself who made the gift. With great pride, the little girl jumps for joy and confirms she made it all by herself. The protagonist finds it amusing. With a radiant face, the girl holds out the gift, saying it's for him to wear. Completely surprised, the boy asks if it's really for him, and if it will even look good on him. The young girl pouts, and asks if he doesn't want her gift. The protagonist quickly denies it, saying that of course he wants the scarf. Hearing this, the little girl breaks into a huge smile of pure happiness. She then puts the scarf on him and says he should have accepted it right away. With the gift around his neck, the boy comments that the stitching seems a little loose. The girl announces that tomorrow is Christmas, so she puts on a fake mustache and says it's a gift from Rhea Claus. With a gentle smile, our hero understands the gesture and thanks her for the gift from the bottom of his heart. With a smile, the girl proposes they have a belated Christmas party after her ballet recital. She says he'll have to give them a gift too, but he reveals that he never fulfilled that promise because his family was in an accident. Back in the present, the protagonist remembers that they never returned home. A voice calls his name, pulling him from his sad memories of the past in his apartment. The young man remains lost in his thoughts about what happened, looking at the shelf. He focuses on a very special memory from his childhood as he looks at his family photo, and at the scarf his little sister gave him as a gift. With that, our hero apologizes, and asks his partner to repeat what it said earlier. The creature then tells him to pull himself together, because they have a mission that cannot fail. The protagonist agrees, but asks why his sister, Ria, is alive in the first place. He then concludes that everyone died in the accident, and that she can't possibly be alive. His partner asks what he knows about the accident, and the young man says it was a mystery. At this, the entity explains that this mystery is beyond their current science. The protagonist is shocked and confused by the revelation, unable to understand a thing. The cute creature reveals that a hole in space-time opened in the sky that day. Confused, the protagonist asks what that is, and the entity confirms it's a dimensional connection. The being explains that the plane was pulled through the hole, and that's why it disappeared from the radar before it crashed, leaving him shocked. The young man says that doesn't change the fact that all the passengers died. His partner recalls that his sister's body was never found in the wreckage of the accident. With that, the creature concludes that she was the only one sucked into that hole alone. With wide eyes, the hero finally begins to understand the truth behind everything. The entity says the place is called the Dimensional Rift, where time and space are not the same. Therefore, years in this world for the girl would be less than the blink of an eye there. So when the hole opens again, his sister will finally return to this world. He reveals that this is why he came from the future, because when he figured everything out, it was already too late. The doll grabs his clothes and begs the young man to save the girl. This time, urgently, the small creature asks the protagonist of this world to do what he couldn't do in the other one. The protagonist remains silent as he watches this creature. He then agrees and asks where and when the hole in space-time will appear. The creature says it will appear right above the Tokyo Tower in the Sky Castle dungeon. The next day, we see the city of Tokyo preparing for another normal workday. Looking out over the city, the protagonist is ready for the mission. With his sister's scarf around his neck, the doll complains that he bought all the offensive items and recovery potions from the shop. The young man replies that he was only able to get them thanks to the money he earned in the Azabu crystal labyrinth. The entity then asks why he is wearing the scarf in the middle of June. With a distant look, our hero just says that he's very sensitive to the cold, and that's why he wears the scarf. His partner understands and decides not to press the issue so as not to make him uncomfortable. He warns that the Sky Castle dungeon gate is in the Tokyo Tower's observatory. In 24 hours, the space-time hole will open, 300 meters above the dungeon. When that happens, the hole will eject his sister from the dimensional rift. But if the hero doesn't get there in time to save her, the girl will suffer a fatal fall. The protagonist clenches his fist tightly. With his hand in front of him, he activates his space-time mage suit and prepares to act. With that, a bright blue aura envelops him, and he gets ready to enter the dungeon with his suit and a determined look. He vows that he will save his sister at any cost. Our hero then arrives at the location but is immediately stopped by two armed guards, who tell him to stop. They explain that a dungeon gate has appeared, and that only A-rank adventurers, or higher, are allowed to enter. After receiving the information, the protagonist decides to use a different approach. His partner then asks what he is going to do, and the protagonist says there's no time, and that they're taking a shortcut. With that, the protagonist concentrates a blue energy in his feet, preparing for a swift move. Then he jumps and begins to climb the enormous red tower. Using his enhanced agility, the creature says he's learning, but the protagonist complains that his future self is very annoying. The hero continues to scale the metal structure at an impressive speed. Upon reaching the top, the young man peeks over the edge to see what's happening. Inside the location, a red-haired man and his guards are analyzing the situation with a serious look. The young man's partner warns that a troublesome guy has arrived, and the protagonist asks if he knows him. The entity then explains that he is the head of the Adventurers Guild of the region and is very stubborn. The being from the future also says that the man will just stand there staring at the gate without doing anything useful. The protagonist decides he can't wait and tells his partner that he's entering the portal. With that, the protagonist intends to shatter the tower's window to get inside. The loud noise catches the guild leader's attention, who wonders what that sound was. He then orders one of the guards to immediately check the source of the noise. The soldier looks at the window but sees nothing broken, becoming very confused. Suddenly, our hero appears as a fast blur behind the unsuspecting guard. With a single touch, the young man strikes the soldier from behind, leaving him completely unconscious. The guard then falls to the floor, and our hero reveals that he used another matter restoration ability. He explains that he fixed the glass he broke to get in, and now thinks about his next step. the supposed guard who was knocked out runs to warn his boss that they have a big problem. The soldier says it's an intruder and that he's too strong to be defeated alone. Annoyed, the guild leader decides he will personally deal with this whole situation. With that, he yells for his men to follow him to confront the mysterious intruder. However, one of the guards who was there doesn't move and just stands still. Slowly, the soldier raises his hand and begins to take off his helmet. In reality, it was our hero in disguise, and his partner congratulates him on the great strategy. With that, he removes the disguise. The protagonist approaches the portal and says it's time to go in. He then walks towards the portal, but upon reaching the other side, his eyes widen in total astonishment at what he sees. Suddenly, the young man finds himself falling headfirst into an inverted world. He then realizes that the landscape around him is completely upside down. His partner explains that going down the stairs in the Sky Castle dungeon actually means going up. The cute creature also reveals that the dungeon's theme is the occult, and it will have undead monsters. The protagonist finds this very ironic. Fighting an army of the dead under a clear blue sky, he comments that it doesn't suit his style. But the entity says it has already taken care of that. His companion then reminds him that they imbued his new sword with the powerful element of light. With this, the young man recalls choosing the light attribute. During the weapon's synthesis, the companion says that this was the main reason for his training, and tells him to get ready with a determined look. The hero advances through the dungeon. Ready to face the enemies, his eyes shine with confidence as he prepares for the battle to come. Before him, a hooded creature appears for the first confrontation. The hooded enemy advances and attacks our hero with its crystal staff, but the young man defends himself with his sword, shining brightly as he prepares for a counterattack. At that moment, his companion explains that this dungeon disappeared in the future and is unexplored. The entity says it has information, but the protagonist continues to fight the monsters with his feet firmly on the ground. The young man prepares himself. Then the companion reveals that the Sky Castle has a total of 100 floors, and a powerful and unavoidable boss protects the dungeon every 20 floors. The hero then calculates that he will have to face a total of 5 bosses in this place. Looking at his cell phone, he sees that there are 20 hours left, and he can't waste any time. But suddenly, the protagonist's eyes widen out of nowhere. A horde of strange zombies begins to appear. In an instant, an army of bizarre creatures appears before our hero. Up close, we see the monsters with red eyes and open mouths screaming. With no chance to react, the protagonist is surrounded by the creatures. The entire horde then pounces on him, covering him completely. In the process, however, something happened. Suddenly, a silence fell over the dungeon. From the center of the horde, a blue energy explosion erupts, and the protagonist summons the divine beast Cerberus. With his invocation, he says there is no time to lose, and that they will get through them all as quickly as possible. With his new summon, the beasts roar at the horde of dark monsters. He carves a path through the enemies that appear before him. Looking back, the young man comments that he thought they would be stronger. His partner explains that because it is a sacred beast, its attacks have the sacred attribute. With that, the hero orders them to keep advancing and break through the horde of enemies. Thus, they quickly ascend the floors of the dungeon, defeating everyone in their path. Suddenly, the great beast stops abruptly in its tracks. The protagonist then questions his partner about the reason for the stop. Sudden halt in the middle of the floor. Looking up, the protagonist's face turns serious. At this moment, they see a dark portal appearing in the middle of a circular arena. The entity reveals that this is the first boss, which appears every 20 floors of the darkness. An evil energy begins to slowly take over the entire place. Then a golden carriage appears in the middle of all that black smoke. Then, the mysterious figures slowly descend from the vehicle that just appeared. In an elegant suit, they descend the stairs. The figure steps onto the ground with its elegant boots, and reveals itself to our hero in the arena. Then a screen reveals that they are the fallen noble family, a group of powerful vampires. The protagonist realizes there are 3 Class A undead monsters right in front of him. With a determined expression, he thinks that he needs to defeat them to save his sister. At that moment, his partner desperately shouts for him to be careful, as the enemies are coming. Without wasting any time, the trio of vampires advances to attack the protagonist with everything they have. Calmly, he tells his friend to fall back, and the creature asks if he will use the guild item. The young man then confirms that he will, as he prepares for the battle to come. With that, he activates his new skill called Eye of Time, and his eye glows blue. Through his special vision, he can see the attack pattern of the youngest noble. The protagonist can also clearly see the next move of the vampire attacking him. He then predicts the flow of time to know how the family's master will attack. With this advantage, the protagonist prepares his counterattack with a bluish energy. He then launches a shower of golden calcium knives toward one of the vampire nobles. The youngest noble makes a face as if he feels nothing, even with the blade stuck in him. After the two get closer, the protagonist dodges the attack. The protagonist then launches himself past the younger enemy. He then uses his golden calcium blade against the other monster. The protagonist strikes the creature with a few daggers, which it clearly feels. With his eyes glowing blue, the hero faces his enemies with total determination. At this moment, he charges toward the family's master, who screams in rage at the young man's attack. His dagger then strikes the vampire's chest head-on. The vampire attempts a counterattack, landing a blow on the protagonist, who protects himself with his arms. The force of the attack throws him back violently, and he screams in pain from the impact. Even though he's injured, the protagonist places his hand on the ground. With that, he uses the energy and gains some distance. His eyes glow, and he thinks that the enemies are in the perfect position for his plan. Now, far from the vampires, the hero raises his hand and gives the command to detonate everything. He then clenches his fist, and an immense blue energy, it begins to explode everywhere. And with that, an explosion hits all three vampires. At the same time, they scream in pain as a great explosion of blue and green energy illuminates the entire dungeon floor. His partner explains that each knife is worth 100,000 credits and is made of a very rare metal. The creature then complains that he throws expensive items around. Without thinking of the consequences, the entity then questions if it's fair to win just by spending millions of credits on the fight. With a serious look, the protagonist says the battle isn't over yet and he needs to continue. He reveals that he only destroyed their physical bodies, and now they have returned as ghosts. The young man realizes that just as he suspected, it is difficult to harm ghost monsters with physical attacks, but this also exposed their weakness, and he enchants his sword with the light attribute. With his sword glowing brightly, he charges with everything he has toward the enemies with a shout. With a battle cry, the protagonist attacks the ghosts with his sacred blade. Without hesitation, he then uses the Chaos Meteorite skill, and several beams of light fall from the sky. The blinding light of the explosion illuminates the arena, defeating the ghosts all at once as a system screen appears, informing him that he has defeated the enemies and gained many rewards. After the victory, a staircase of light appears before him, leading to the next floor. Without wasting time, the hero begins to descend the steps to continue his training. With his eye glowing intensely, he vows that he will rescue his sister, named Rhea, on the 40th floor of the dungeon. The divine beast roars fiercely, but instead of attacking our hero, the creature charges in another direction. With its eyes glowing, it turns out Cerberus was attacking another boss on the floor, the undead Lamia Queen. After the battle, the three-headed monster calmly approaches our protagonist, the once threatening beast. Now licks the young man's face as if it were a puppy. Our hero then pets the creature and comments that it seems more like a pet with that. They advance to the 5th floor, but the entity suddenly yells for them to stop obeying the command. The immense three-headed beast stops immediately, mounted on his new companion. The protagonist asks why they stopped in front of that wall. His partner then says there is no mistake, and the protagonist is confused by the situation. The creature tells him to activate the Eye of Time and look at the wall to see what is there. The young man's eyes glow with an intense blue energy. Looking at the wall, the protagonist is shocked by what he sees, and cannot believe it. With his new vision, he discovers a secret room that disappeared in the original timeline. At this, the doll transforms into a card, and tells him to place it on the wall to open the secret passage. He obeys and places the envelope in the crack in the wall, as instructed to enter before advancing. The protagonist asks his new companion to wait outside. Inside the secret room, he finds a huge blue crystal floating in midair. Suspicious, the young man asks the entity if this is another trap, like last time. His partner assures him they won't deceive the hero. A system screen appears, revealing that this is an acoustic crystal that releases hidden abilities with a touch. A bluish energy begins to flow from the crystal, directly into the boy's hand. Suddenly, the object shatters into several pieces, releasing a blinding light all over the place. The system informs him that he has gained new space-time magics and unlocked his potential. The entity is surprised that he obtained the avatar. Replay. The young man asks what that is. His partner just says it's better for him to test the new skill. In a real combat on the 60th floor, they encounter the zombie boss, Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. The doll explains that the monster flies, spits a solution that melts everything, and also regenerates. Annoyed, the protagonist complains that the creature is just listing the enemy's characteristics. With his eyes glowing, he prepares to face the new boss of that dungeon. Without wasting time, the monster attacks with its stinger. At an impressive speed, the attack seemed to have pierced the protagonist's chest in the blink of an eye. The protagonist appears behind the creature, which is confused and understands nothing. His future self realizes that he is already using his new combat skill. The hero's blue clone remains motionless while the monster looks at it, not understanding the situation. With that, the real protagonist floats in the air, watching the beast attack his illusion. He then reveals that he is using his new space-time magic, the Avatar Replay. While the monster attacks the clone, the young man activates his quick body skill to fight back. With his body accelerated to level 3, he prepares for a precise counterattack. A blue aura surrounds him, and he appears behind the creature. The force from his feet is so great that the ground begins to crack from the released energy. He then explains that the Avatar Replay magic can create a clone of his past self. The clone temporarily takes his place to deceive the enemy in battle. The hero and his clone prepare to attack the monster. Suddenly, several clones appear and attack Beelzebub from all directions at the same time. With swords in hand, both the hero and his clones prepare for the attack. Several clones of the protagonist appear at the same time for the fight. They all advance, together in a coordinated attack against the giant monster. He and his clones use the Chaos Meteorite attack to defeat the enemy. The copies surround the giant monster. It has nowhere to escape from this trap, but in response, Beelzebub launches a poisonous attack. The powerful attack hits the clones head-on, and they begin to dissolve. Due to the corrosive poison, the real hero manages to dodge, but all his copies are destroyed by the monster. Suddenly, fish of golden light appear in the air around the creature. The monster is left completely immobilized, unable to move after these strikes from the protagonist, and finally, he defeats the creature. His partner congratulates him and calls him a ninja master, but the young man looks ahead and tells him to stop. The protagonist says that now only 2 bosses are left to finish this. He takes a step, and another staircase appears, but suddenly he feels a sharp headache. Not understanding what is happening, the protagonist loses his balance from the intense pain, and his partner screams. Frightened by the scene, he then falls unconscious to the ground, while his plush creature screams his name. While unconscious, the protagonist has some flashbacks from 3 years ago. It shows our hero much younger. A little girl appears with a ballet book in hand and asks Ethan for something with her arms crossed. The young man does not seem to agree much with the young girl's request. She promises she will not give up halfway if he accepts. With a cute look, his sister insists on the request one more time. Seeing the young girl's insistence, the protagonist lets out a sigh and seems to give in. He then questions if she really wants to do ballet, and if she is being serious. With a huge smile on her face, the girl confirms that she is. With great joy, the older brother finally agrees. He asks her to choose her slippers. Very happy with the news, the little one starts jumping for joy on the living room sofa. Sitting next to him, the girl begins to flip through the book to choose her pair. Seeing his sister's happiness, the protagonist gives a gentle and contented smile. After that, we see the two arriving at a dance studio for her class. Inside, several other girls were stretching and chatting excitedly. The girl then appears, in her ballet outfit, and says she is ready to start. The other girls celebrate Mia's arrival and say they will do their best. Surprised, the little one looks towards the door. Upon hearing her name called, the girl smiles and waves to her brother. He is watching her from the entrance of the room. The young man then waves back, and he notices how well she seems to be fitting in. Her new friends tease her about her brother being there, and the little girl blushes. Soon after, the dance class begins, and all the students take their positions to practice. At first, the girl seems a bit clumsy trying to imitate the movements, but even with the difficulty, the little girl continues to strive, learning the dance on her tiptoes. She tries to perform the movements with as much grace as she can muster. Then, with a smile on her face, the girl seems to finally be having genuine fun. Seeing this, her brother Liam thinks that she looks like she's having a great time in class. After the lesson, the girl says goodbye to her new friends. On the way home, the little one says that the dance class was a lot of fun. She admits that ballet is quite difficult, but she's determined to do her very best. The protagonist listens intently and says he's happy to hear that from her. The little girl then seems to think of something, and her expression turns more serious. She suddenly stops walking and calls out her brother's name. The girl asks if the slippers and the dance classes were very expensive. With a smile, the protagonist says it was nothing, and that she doesn't need to worry. But the girl remains concerned, clutching her bag tighter. His sister mentions that since their parents are away at a conference, she concludes that all the money must have come out of her brother's pocket. Our hero is surprised, realizing his little sister has seen right through him, but the girl says it's okay, and that he shouldn't worry about it. He then asks if she had a lot of fun in her ballet class earlier. The protagonist says he's just happy that she's found something she truly loves to do. With eyes full of admiration, the girl looks at her brother and calls his name. In her hands, she holds a small gift box to thank him. With a flushed face, the young girl thanks him for everything he's done for her. Seeing this, the protagonist gives a gentle smile to his dear little sister. Suddenly, His little sister hugs him and says she loves him. She then runs ahead, saying that she's going to cook for him to show her love. The scene cuts to the present, and our hero remembers this with a determined look. We see him mounted on the three-headed beast he summoned in the dungeon. His partner then asks if the young man has finally woken from his blackout. The protagonist asks if he passed out, and the creature says he used too much of his energy. He thinks about using a potion, but his companion says he's already taken care of it. The entity explains that it healed his injuries, but not our hero's mental fatigue. With wide eyes, the young man desperately asks about the deadline. His partner then reveals that only 5 hours remain until the duel. The protagonist gets up and tells them to get going, even though he's utterly exhausted at this moment. He remembers his sister and promises himself that they will go to her ballet class once more. The creature silently observes the young man's determination to continue. The entity says there is one boss left, and then the final dungeon boss, but it thinks that at this rate, the protagonist won't last much longer. With a serious look, the cute creature says it has no choice but to use its last resort. He reached the 80th floor of the Sky Castle dungeon, and we see the Acid King's mummy, but the monster is immediately crushed by a powerful blue energy, and the creature shatters into countless crystal fragments. Then we see that the attack came from our hero, who used his gravity magic, and he extends his hand controlling the power. A system window informs him that he has defeated the boss and leveled up 2 times, and his swordsmanship skill also increased by 4 points after the intense battle. Our hero looks completely exhausted and breathless, and can barely stand after so much effort. His companion Cerberus approaches the protagonist with a smile. The young man thanks his faithful companion for his help, and he pets the beast's head while the doll watches. Suddenly a system window appears, asking if he wishes to use an elixir, and without a second thought, the protagonist selects the yes option. With that, a green healing aura completely envelops him, and his energy and wounds are restored in the blink of an eye. Even after recovering, the boy still feels the exhaustion, and his partner asks if he doesn't want to rest for a bit after that fight, but the young man refuses and says there's no time to lose, as there are only 3 hours left for his sister to emerge from the space-time hole. With his goal in mind, he decides to press on immediately to the final floor right after. A system notification informs him that he has reached the 100th floor and the Sky Castle dungeon has been completed. Looking out at a cosmic landscape, he says they've finally reached the top, and his partner confirms that it's time to face the final boss. The creature explains that after defeating the enemy he can reach the exact location, because that's where the space-time hole will appear. With a determined look, our hero touches his scarf. His eyes glow with blue energy, and he says he is ready to continue the fight. The young man then walks down a long corridor towards an imposing throne. Sitting on the throne, a giant skeleton is seen shrouded in a sinister purple aura. A window reveals that he is the Soul Reaper, the god of the underworld, and the dungeon boss. Upon seeing the enemy, the protagonist grows tense, and his partner looks very annoyed by the situation. The cute creature reveals that this monster doesn't even exist in the future database. Suddenly, the dungeon boss speaks, and wonders why there is only one human there. At this, the protagonist is surprised to discover that this creature can speak. The monster praises him for having come so far alone, without anyone's help. The Soul Reaper begins to summon a dark weapon with its purple magic in response. The hero materializes his own sword with a bright blue energy holding his new weapon. He faces the giant skeleton preparing for combat. The god of the underworld promises to cast the deadliest curse in existence on him. The protagonist's partner notices that the enemy's weapon is in the database. The screen reveals that the weapon is the Divine Scythe of Curses, a staff for illusion magic with negative effects. But the protagonist doesn't care about the description and says it doesn't matter how strong it is, his eyes glowing intensely. He vows to defeat the monster immediately. Using his enhanced vision, he finds the enemy's weak spot on its chest. Then, the hero activates body acceleration to level 3 to begin his assault. With incredible speed, the young man charges towards the Soul Reaper. The god of the underworld is surprised by the boy's swiftness. The protagonist dodges the giant scythe strike with great agility and continues to advance. The dark blade descends with devastating force and nearly hits the protagonist. The weapon's impact shatters the ground to pieces, but the hero manages to escape the attack unharmed. After dodging, he leaps over the monster, searching for an opening to retaliate. The young man then concentrates his blue energy in his hand. Preparing for a counterattack, his target is the glowing core in the giant skeleton's chest. To end the fight, he leaps into the air and prepares a devastating blow to the enemy's weak spot. His sword tries to hit its target, but the monster defends itself well. A large explosion of purple energy occurs, but the strike doesn't seem to have had the expected effect. To the protagonist's surprise, The god of the underworld is still standing and appears unharmed. Preparing a new attack, the giant skeleton then swings its scythe and unleashes a powerful wave of energy towards the young man. The monster fires a powerful blow against the protagonist. The Soul Reaper realizes it attacked a clone and the real protagonist. With that, the real hero appears right above the enemy, ready to deliver a fatal blow from above. At that moment, he activates his skill and shouts the name of the spell to summon paralyzing chains. Blue chains appear out of nowhere and wrap around the giant monster's body, trapping its movements. With his sword in hand, the young man prepares to seize the opportunity and defeat the boss once and for all. But the god of the underworld mocks him and says that such a curse will not work on a divine being. Suddenly, the energy chains begin to crack and break under the immense strength of the Reaper. Seeing this, the protagonist is shocked, as he did not expect his ability to fail in such a way. The chains shatter, and the creature easily breaks free from the spell, its red eyes glowing. The creature glares at the protagonist with hatred, preparing for a counterattack. At that moment, a purple energy traps the hero, and his partner screams his name in despair upon seeing the young man in danger. The powerful blow surprises the protagonist. However, before he could be hit, he narrowly dodges. His hand extends as he falls uncontrollably after evading the attack. Startled, the hero recovers and defends himself against the attack of a large skeleton. Wielding a giant scythe, the monster taunts him for dodging twice and comments on his confidence in his speed. The creature then calls him an inferior being for not having wings, and for needing to crawl. With that, the skeleton says it will attack his legs first, to immobilize him. The enemy then activates a skill called Dimension of Curses. Shocked, the young man feels the world around him begin to distort completely. At this moment, everything turns upside down, and he starts to fall upwards toward the boss. In the inverted sky, they face each other. The protagonist wonders again what happened, and the monster smiles maliciously. Looking down, he sees the dungeon floor cracking and falling. The ground shatters, and he regrets having climbed so high with no floors below, only to plummet now. The skeleton announces that it will not move, and prepares an attack with its scythe. The protagonist panics upon seeing the monster smiling maliciously upside down. With that, he summons a blue energy dagger and prepares for a counterattack. The skeleton's strike collides with the young man's dagger, generating a massive explosion. He then says, "You can't make an omelet without breaking eggs," and yells for the explosion to detonate. He is thrown backward and continues to fall through the dimension's inverted sky at that moment. The protagonist realizes there is a wall and that he is caught in the trap. Without hesitation, the protagonist uses his blade to anchor himself to the wall. With the wall shattered, he braces himself on the floating debris. He wears a determined expression. Observing the scene, the monster is surprised by the boy's unexpected action. The hero faces his enemy and begins to think, trying to understand the situation he has gotten himself into. He then realizes that this entire fall is just an illusion created by his opponent. The young man believes he has fallen under the spell and wonders how he can break this magic, his gaze focused. He shakes his head, but the skeleton gives him no time and already prepares another attack with its dark energy. The monster then opens its mouth and fires a powerful beam of pink energy at the hero. The pink energy beam narrowly misses him, but it grazes his leg. The dark energy then latches onto his leg like a kind of curse. At this, the monster announces that he will be its newest test subject for magic. The creature explains that the grudge of the dead will slowly corrode his body. Then, the skeleton asks what will finish the protagonist off first. Will it be the hatred of his own kind, or something much more powerful? Or will it be its powerful underworld scythe that defeats him for good? The protagonist then realizes he needs to escape this dimensional space quickly, but he wonders how he can do that while trapped and immobilized by the magic. The skeleton gives him no time and already prepares a powerful attack with its giant scythe, a malevolent glint in its eyes. The monster bids the human farewell and unleashes its final blow. The scythe releases a massive wave of purple energy towards our hero. Feeling the pain, he wonders if it's all over for him in this place. In that moment, he remembers the image of his sister calling out to him. With his last ounce of strength, he whispers his sister's name. The skeleton monster then smiles maliciously, ready to end the fight. Suddenly, chains of blue energy bind the skeleton, which is completely baffled. Our hero is completely shocked by the turn of events and doesn't know what happened. Looking back, he tries to figure out where that unexpected help came from. To his surprise, it was his cute partner who used the magic to trap the monster. His partner said that this was its last resort, to save the young man's life. Upon hearing this, the partner begins to glow intensely. With a very strong blue light, the cute creature's body is covered in a powerful blue electrical energy. A blinding wave of energy erupts. The blue light blinds everything around them in the dungeon. Eyes like the protagonists appear. A hooded man holding an energy sword appears in front of the protagonist. With a different voice, the mysterious figure begins to speak calmly. He says it would be a problem if the protagonist ended up dying in that place. With that, his future version unleashes a powerful magic to rewind everything around them. Our protagonist is shocked and feels time moving in a strange way. He then realizes that time is flowing backward, and the monster's attack retreats. Suddenly, everything changes, and the protagonist finds himself falling through a bizarre space. With his sword, he hits an invisible barrier that begins to shatter in midair. Floating in the air, the protagonist wonders what this place is. Shortly after, the arena floor begins to crack and completely shatter. Large pieces of the dungeon float through space, and everything seems to be reconstructing itself. The hero then lands safely and faces the powerful skeletal monster in front of him. Both the protagonist and the creature are very confused by the change. The enemy wonders if that wasn't a divine-level spell used against it. Suddenly, the mysterious figure lands on the ground beside our protagonist. It was his older version, who says it's been a while since he had that appearance. The monster gets angry at the scene and shouts that the show's introduction is finally over. The skeletal monster then releases a purple energy and summons its magical creations. From the energy, several bizarre angels emerge, with evil smiles on their faces. Facing an army, the future version says that the monsters are A-class, or higher. With that, his older self tells the boy to stand up, because he will handle the minions. Our protagonist is shocked by the command to fight the boss, alone. He then says that the enemy is of a divine level, and too strong to be defeated. But his older version says that he now understands and controls the magic of space-time. With a smile, he finishes by saying that in the end, they are the same person. Hearing these words, the young hero seems to finally understand what he needs to do. With determination, he agrees to the plan and prepares for the great battle. At that moment, the entity says he will share the plan of attack to defeat the enemy. The two then prepare to fight while the monster watches them from a distance. The creature points in their direction and orders its army to attack without mercy. At this, all the dark angels fly towards the pair. Suddenly, a huge explosion of blue energy hits the monster head-on. With that, the duo charges forward with everything they have to begin the battle against the enemies. With a smile, his older version faces the horde of dark angels before him. He then uses a gravity territory to trap all the enemies in mid-air. With this, the dark angels are paralyzed, unable to move or attack. Floating in the air, the entity taunts the monsters, daring them to come and fight. He then challenges all the minions to attack him at once. Meanwhile, our hero charges forward with his sword to attack the main boss. On his way, he must dodge a few minions that manage to escape. Even so, the young hero does not stop and keeps running towards the skeletal monster. His future version then uses an acceleration field to aid his dash. With this boost, the protagonist gains incredible speed and thanks his partner for the help. As he gets closer, the monster calls him an inferior and disgusting life form. But with a determined gaze, the hero retorts, telling the enemy to prepare to die. The boss then activates the Dimension of Curses to try and stop the young hero's attack. However, the hero says he has seen this technique before and will not fall for it again. With that, the protagonist shatters the barrier, leaving the monster shocked. His eyes glow intensely, and he charges forward with a furious cry of determination. The enemy calls him an inferior and insolent being for daring to challenge him. The young hero decides that indirect attacks are a waste of time and that he needs to get straight to the point, so he intends to attack the monster head-on, and soon, their swords clash. Collides with the creature's energy, causing massive beams to erupt at that moment. The hero unleashes the powerful skill called Chaos Meteor, and the strike lands a direct hit. The monster screams in agony from the impact of the attack, but the enemy retaliates, using the Blade of Curses. The attack strikes the young man dead on, aiming to finish off the protagonist, and he screams as he feels the powerful blow tear through his body. The impact sends him flying backward, and he begins to bleed profusely from his mouth and chest. At this moment, the monster notices multiple apparitions of the protagonist and is completely bewildered. With this technique, the hero can share and reduce the damage he has taken, even while wounded. The young man charges forward with everything he has for one last, desperate attack, with a battle cry and glowing eyes. He vows that he will defeat the enemy as the hero strikes the monster with a devastating blow. Causing a massive explosion, he pressed forward again, catching the Soul Reaper by surprise. He poured every last ounce of his strength into his next move, managing to plunge his sword into the creature's heart. The Soul Reaper let out a piercing shriek, and for a moment, Haruto believed he had won. But then, its face twisted into a grin that sent a cold shiver down his spine. He realized with a jolt that it had no heart, and before he could even process it, the creature sliced him in two. His future self screamed his name in alarm as the Soul Reaper laughed, mocking them. It taunted them for thinking its weak point was something as simple as its heart. It revealed that one of the special abilities of the underworld gods is to feign a weak point to deceive their enemies. The creature jeered at how foolish humans were, as Haruto's severed body fell to the ground while the Soul Reaper laughed triumphantly. Commanding its swarm of lesser monsters to advance, it sneered at his future self, pointing out that he was the only one left. Stammering in shock, Haruto's future self declared that it was impossible and desperately wondered aloud what the real weak point could be. The Soul Reaper roared that a god has no weaknesses. It boasted that if it had one, it would be something as untouchable as the very concept of its existence, the forbidden crown of Ares. With that, it ordered its monsters to attack the future Haruto. It declared that it would not listen to any pleas for mercy, but the future Haruto remained surprisingly calm. He asked his past self if he had heard that, because now they knew what to do. Suddenly, the real Haruto appeared right behind the Soul Reaper. His sword was aimed directly at its head. He confirmed that he had received the message, and the Soul Reaper spun around, completely bewildered and screaming that it couldn't be possible. After all, it had just sliced him in 2 moments ago. Haruto explained that what it cut was merely a copy. When the Soul Reaper attacked his torso, he used Avatar Replay to create a clone and send it forward, while the real Ethan lay on the ground the entire time, still not understanding. The Reaper screamed that Ethan should have died from a direct hit of its divine power. Ethan admitted that it was definitely a fatal blow. However, his future self had cast a space-time ability, called Rewind, on him just before the attack landed. Time literally rewound for Ethan, to just before the moment of his death. His future self added that the ability was incredibly complex and could only be used once on the same person. Fortunately for them, the plan had worked perfectly as the Soul Reaper charged toward Ethan, but his future self unleashed the level 78 stopping chain to bind the creature. He then asked Ethan if they should prepare for the grand finale. Ethan turned to the Soul Reaper, confirming that it had mentioned that the crown above its head was its weak point. His future self interjected, vowing that they would completely obliterate it. He added that they would smash that frightening head to bits. Ethan took a deep breath, and a memory of his little sister, thanking him for everything and saying she loved him, flashed through his mind. The memories washed over him. Bolstering his power with his renewed determination, he unleashed his full strength. In a single, powerful strike, he sliced off the Soul Reaper's head. He then leaped into the air and, moving with incredible speed, he diced its head into countless tiny fragments. The Soul Reaper's head vanished completely, and its body collapsed to the ground, finally defeated. As it fell, all the smaller monsters vanished along with it. Ethan landed back on his feet just as a system message appeared, announcing that he had defeated the god of the underworld, the Soul Reaper. He gained 120,000 experience points and 35 million credits. He turned to his future self and reported that the target had been eliminated. At that exact moment, a staircase appeared, leading to the final floor. His future self said it was finally time to go, and Ethan agreed, walking toward it. Ethan then studied his older self and asked with a hint of concern if this was really what he was going to look like when he got older. His future self threatened to playfully hit him. Ethan quickly clarified that he only meant it would have been nice if his future self had helped from the beginning. As they started up the stairs, his future self reminded him that he was only a last resort and the situation was more complicated than it looked. He cut the conversation short, saying he didn't have much time before the hole in space-time opened up, and shook Ethan's hand firmly, saying seriously that they needed to hurry. They ascended to the top floor of the Sky Castle dungeon, which was shrouded in a thick fog. His future self immediately looked upward and shouted to Ethan that it was there. They both watched, while the sky began to crack and then explode with floating energy. In the middle of all the chaos stood a little girl, their sister, laughing. His future self told him that the hole would remain connected to their world for another 9 minutes and 48 seconds, so they should take their time and not rush while his future self floated toward the hole. He suddenly remembered something and activated the accelerated field ability, creating energy circles as he ascended. Haruto called out, and they both rushed upwards. As they neared the hole, Haruto shouted for Ria. She opened her eyes, saw him, and reached out her hand as he yelled that he was right there. But his future self told him to stay calm, explaining that the inside of the space-time hole was disconnected from the world's laws of cause and effect, which meant that only space-time magic would work. His future self then flew into the hole, telling Haruto that he would use his magic to push Ria out, so Haruto needed to be ready to catch her. Positioning himself behind Ria, his future self concentrated all his space-time power into his hands, and pushed with all his might to get her out. Ria moved closer to the edge of the hole, and Haruto waited, his vision blurry, as he strained to see her. She called out to him, calling him Big Brother. But then, to his horror, the hole began to close, shocking him. Haruto yelled to his future self, asking what was happening. His future self shouted back, just as surprised, that it was too early for the hole to be closing. Panic began to set in as he saw how quickly it was shrinking, with Ria dangerously close to being caught. In a desperate move, his future self used every last bit of his power to keep the hole open, screaming for Haruto to pull Ria through quickly. Haruto screamed back a determined yes and used his own space-time magic to pull her toward him as Ria drew closer. His future self struggled to keep the hole from collapsing. His future self warned that if Ria's body got caught in the closing hole, she would be torn to pieces, and even if she managed to get out, she would die from the fall if he couldn't catch her. Haruto focused intensely, responding that he understood. When Ria finally cleared the hole and started to fall, she reached out to him, and he reached back. He caught her, grabbing her hand and pulling her into a tight embrace. He then shouted for his future self to hurry up and come back, but there was no answer. Confused, Haruto asked what was wrong, and urged him to hurry. His future self, however, just smiled and said this was where they had to part ways. A completely confused Haruto asked what he was talking about. His future self explained that he had reached his limit, and could no longer maintain his form. He added that he had used up all the Chronos factor stored inside him with that last push, feat, and didn't have enough power to go back where he came from. Haruto tried to say something, but his future self interrupted him, saying his name seriously. He told Haruto that he hadn't been a very good student, always complaining and making silly mistakes. Just when it seemed like he was growing up, his emotions would take over and lead to more mistakes. But despite all that, he had no regrets fighting alongside him, because Haruto was such a human and kind-hearted person. His future self then told him that the hole in space-time would never open again, making this their final farewell. Devastated, Haruto shouted for him to wait, insisting that this couldn't be happening. But his future self placed all his hopes on Haruto, telling him to save their world and his place in it. Gritting his teeth in pain, Haruto agreed with tears in his eyes, promising that he would take on the responsibility. His future self laughed softly, remembering that it was a promise. Turning to Ria, he reassured her, saying that she was safe now, calling her little lady. Ria, however, asked if he could also be her brother. The question took his future self by surprise, and he remembered how warm Ria had been, lovely and sweet to him. He smiled gently at her and welcomed her home. Then, as the hole in space-time finally closed, the future version of Haruto vanished along with it. When the hole disappeared completely, Haruto clutched his chest in agony and let out a loud scream, mourning the loss of someone so incredibly important to him. In that moment, Haruto had achieved a great victory, but he had also suffered a profound loss. The next day, after clearing the Tokyo Tower's Sky Castle dungeon, Haruto walked into his classroom at the Adventurer Cultivation Agency Division. He was shocked when all the girls in the room rushed over to him, excitedly saying they had been waiting for him. Confused, he saw that even third-year senior girls were there. One of the girls approached and, speaking on behalf of the Hyuga Victims Association, expressed her deepest thanks. With all of them expressing their gratitude, the girls began to speak all at once about how relieved they were that the disgusting predator Hyuga had been beaten senseless, and how they could finally sleep without crying. One girl pointed at him, declaring him their savior, and asking who could have possibly given him the nickname Plague God. Awkwardly, Haruto stammered for them to stop, thinking to himself that all he ever wanted was a quiet and peaceful life. Suddenly, someone else approached him, and he was surprised to see it was Yuzuki. She bowed and said that, as a representative of the student council, she wanted to apologize for what had happened with the president. He told her not to worry about it, since it had nothing to do with her, but she insisted that she couldn't simply let it slide, especially since she was about to become the new student council president. Looking him directly in the eyes, Yuzuki asked if he would be interested in helping the school. He was internally confused as she explained that she was recruiting for the student council, and wanted him to guide the students as the leader of the council's magical security team. The entire class got excited about the offer, but Haruto refused, saying he was fine where he was and wanted to pass, which shocked Yuzuki. She then grabbed his hand and begged, saying she would do anything if he just agreed. Rin couldn't believe that Yuzuki was being so forward with Haruto and became dizzy with shock, stuttering his name. Akemi tried to comfort Rin, saying it was okay. One of the other girls reminded Yuzuki that class was about to start and gently pulled her away from Haruto. Before leaving, Yuzuki shouted that they would continue their conversation at lunch and ordered him to stay in the classroom, citing her new authority as the student council president. Haruto just sighed and scratched his head in complete exasperation during the lunch break. Haruto was on the roof sitting on a bench while checking the system. He saw that his level was 98, his rank was C, and the system was recommending that he rank up to a higher adventurer rank. His skills included swordsmanship at level 64 and space-time magic at level 82. With high stats overall, he also noticed he had 5 new spells, and thought to himself that, with stats like these, he felt invincible. It made sense after all the enemies he had taken down. He was surprised to see that his total credits had reached 43 million, a fortune that no normal high school student should have. As he took a bite of his burger, he heard the sound of people running onto the roof. Yuzuki burst onto the scene abruptly, asking loudly where he was. The girls started searching but couldn't find him anywhere, leaving her frustrated. Yuzuki angrily reminded the others that she had specifically told Haruto to wait in his classroom. Deciding to check the gym next, they all left the roof without ever noticing him peacefully eating while watching them from above. After jumping down, Haruto knew he needed to come up with a plan to deal with situations like this, or his life would get much harder. He then turned on the bench to ask his future self for advice. But when he looked, he remembered that his future self was gone. The painful memory of his absence came flooding back to him. After school, Haruto returned to his apartment with a bag of food. He went up the stairs, punched the code into his apartment door, and opened it. He was surprised to hear Ria shout that he was late, and that she had been waiting for a long time. She then welcomed him home. He smiled and replied, "Your big brother is home, Ria." She proudly showed him the dinner she had prepared, declaring that it was a homemade meal from your cute little sister, which left him impressed. Then she noticed the bag in his hand, and asked if he had bought something from the convenience store. He looked at the bag. Realizing he had picked it up out of habit, she gently scolded him, saying that he should try not to buy things unnecessary on his own. He nodded, admitting that she was right. Next, she reminded him that they would be living together from now on, and that they needed to save money. Surprised by this, he agreed, promising he would do just that. Ria came closer, smiled softly, and once again welcomed him home. He was stunned for a second. When the memory of his future self welcoming Ria home came to his mind, he smiled and told her, "It's good to be home." He placed the plastic bag on the table when Ria suddenly remembered something. Before they had dinner, the two of them went to the family photo. Ria thanked their parents for raising them, and asked them to keep watching over them, which made him smile warmly at his little sister. Then Ria noticed the scarf she had made for him. She couldn't believe he had kept it for so long, and he replied, "Of course I did." She reminded him, it was June in the middle of summer, but he said jokingly that he gets cold easily, as she already knew. After he changed his clothes, they both sat down at the table. Ria proudly presented the meal as her very own home cooking. He smiled. He thanked her for the food, and took a bite. She eagerly asked how it was, and if he liked it. He said it was absolutely delicious, and he still couldn't believe he was really back, and wondered if he was truly home. He reassured her, saying she is truly home. He also said that he had already submitted all the necessary paperwork to the government office to inform them that his little sister was in fact alive. She thanked him and mentioned that she had lost 2 years and really needed to catch up on her studies. Aaron added that this also included her dance academy, making her look worried. She asked if they could afford it. He told her not to worry about money, not now and never again, even in the distant future. He teased her, saying that she could go to the dance academy, even after becoming a grandma. Ria laughed and asked what he meant by that. She then looked at the teddy bear, and asked if it was right that they owed everything to his future version. Aaron confirmed, saying they had a lot to be thankful for. He then remembered the final request from his future self, to save the world, which made him look at the teddy bear, and wonder how he should even begin. At that moment, Ria remembered she had something in her pocket. She remembered that she was inside her clothes. When he rescued her, she took out a small shining cube, and asked if he knew what it was. Naruto was surprised to see that it was a message cube. As soon as he activated it, the cube emitted a bright light, and her teddy bear, now possessed by the essence of her future self, appeared, completely shocking him. His future self began to speak through the teddy bear, saying that if Naruto was seeing this, it meant he was no longer in this world. He assumed that Naruto was probably feeling lost, and wondering how to save the world now that he was gone. Haruto heard the indiscreet, while his future self confidently explained that as the strongest unmatched warrior, of course, he had made preparations in case something like this happened. Then with a touch of arrogance, his future self asked if Haruto agreed that he was totally amazing and told him to feel free to praise him. Naruto couldn't help but think that his future self shouldn't be so conceited, even in a recorded message. His future self then became serious, telling Naruto that he would transfer a letter from the future version 2 to his storage. He asked Haruto to use this to save the world, and called him the savior, asking if he understood the message cube. Then he turned off, transferring the letter to become a time-space mage version 2 for his storage. The system displayed a message from his future self, reminding him not to relax, just because he was no longer around to watch over him. Seeing his future self in the system lifted his spirits, and he smiled and laughed. Noticing his smile, he asked if people were really calling him savior these days, and commented on how that sounded amazing. He just shrugged, saying it was nothing, just the result of various different things happening. Meanwhile, at the general headquarters of the Adventurers Guild, a meeting was underway on the top floor, where the 7 sages, all S-rank adventurers, were gathered. The head of the Minato Kurogane branch, also known as Iron, addressed the group, suggesting they move on to the next item on the agenda: the elimination of the Chaos Dragon in the Nakano train yard, the unauthorized entry into the synthesis facility of the Shinjuku branch, which was restricted to adventurers of a certain level or higher, and the unauthorized invasion of the Sky Castle in Tokyo Tower. He emphasized that these 3 criminal acts, all occurring in the last few days, were most likely carried out by the same person, and that they needed to find the culprit immediately. The 5th sage, known as the King of Kings, Tantalus, responded, asking if the Sky Castle had been properly checked since it could be as difficult as an S-rank dungeon. The 2nd sage, Platinum, also known as the Messenger of the Oracle, asked if a single person really managed to invade a dungeon like that. The 6th sage wanted Muramasa, known as the Exalted Magical Swordsman, replied that it seemed impossible. The 3rd sage, 15, from Zero to Zeta, remained silent during the discussion. The 1st sage, who was also known as the Omni Elemental, commented that these actions could be seen as a challenge directly to the authority of the Adventure Guild, which he found quite interesting. The 4th sage, Siren, also known as the Psycho Witch, wondered what kind of darkness the person could be hiding. Finally, the 7th sage, Tellurium, known as Acoustic Vision, announced that a target of observation had been acquired. Kurogane then addressed the group, saying that he believed all 7 sages understood the gravity of the situation. He proposed that as soon as they found the unknown adventurer, they should recruit him into the group's executive team, and prepare him to be a warrior in the next war in another world. With that, Kurogane declared the meeting of the 7 sages closed the next day on a quiet street. A mother and her child walked happily together. The mother was distracted by some beautiful flowers by the roadside, while the child, enchanted by a bright blue butterfly, began to chase it without his mother noticing. When the child ran into the street, a truck came speeding towards him, and the driver shouted in shock upon seeing him in his path. The mother heard the truck's horn, and in a moment of horror, saw her child standing in the middle of the road. She ran towards her son, but it was already too late. The truck was about to hit him. The child's balloons floated into the air as the tragedy was about to happen, but then, in the blink of an eye, he appeared. Haruto was standing in front of the mother, holding the child safely in his arms. The mother was in shock, unable to process what had just happened. When she confirmed it was really her child, she ran to them, tears streaming down her face. Haruto gently asked the child if she was scared, and softly told her not to worry, because now she was safe. Naruto carefully placed the child on the ground, and the little girl thanked her. Mother immediately hugged her, exclaiming relief that her daughter was safe. Naruto smiled, thinking about how he managed to save the child at the last moment. When he saw her for the first time, he feared he wouldn't be able to, but with his space-time magic, he succeeded. Although he had to sacrifice the girl's balloon and his own drink, in the process, it was a small price to pay for saving a life. He clenched his fist, feeling a sense of satisfaction for using his powers for good. The mother looked at him and said she was coming to thank him personally, but Haruto dismissed, saying it wasn't necessary. She insisted, saying one act like that could not be ignored, and that he should at least tell her his name. However, Haruto politely refused, saying that he preferred she just forget everything because he didn't want to stand out more than he already did, grabbing his school bag. He told her he had to run. The mother yelled for him to wait, but he was already speeding off at high velocity, knowing he would be late if he didn't hurry. A moment later, he arrived at the high school division of the Adventurers Education Agency. He jumped from one building to another until he landed safely on the roof of his classroom. Looking down, he saw the student council gathered at the entrance, asking each other if they had seen Haruto. He sighed in frustration and went to his classroom, but he couldn't ignore the whispers and stares from his classmates. He felt strange, thinking that he didn't even need to use his time control ability to know that he was being watched like a hawk. Meanwhile, Rin watched from the side, feeling that he was drifting further and further away from her. It was just like that time she bumped into him after leaving the Adventurers Guild. She recalled a moment at the Shinjuku Metropolitan Government Office branch of the Adventurers Guild. There she introduced herself as a student from the agency's school of cultivation in the Nakano district, and reported that she had finished a dungeon exploration of Class B. The man at the counter thanked her for her hard work as she was about to leave. He suddenly asked if a student named Haruto attended her school. Surprised, she said she knew a student with that name. The man explained that Takamine from the Weapons Synthesis Laboratory had created a new weapon synthesis theory based on something called the Kuju theory. He added that when he asked Takamine about it, Takamine mentioned that a student from Nakano gave him the clue that helped him develop it. The man commented that all of this seemed quite unbelievable. Rin stared at Haruto, wondering just how far he was planning to go after class. The teacher dismissed them for the morning, reminding them about the exchange student who would be joining them the following week. During the lunch break, Haruto was back on the roof, reviewing the messages his future self had left for him. One of the messages played with his future self, advising him to first focus on honing his skills as a swordsman in the end. The message said that space-time magic is just an auxiliary type of support magic. His true talents lay in his sword, and if he wanted to become a great space-time mage like him, he would first have to live by the sword. The message concluded by saying that the time would come when he would understand why he was telling him this. But for now, that was all. The message then disappeared, and Haruto lay down on the bench, thinking about how his future self was always so cryptic. He wished his future self would just explain things more clearly. Elsewhere, a powerful individual appeared at their school. The man used his stealthy steps and rapid movement skills to magically shorten the distance as he moved. Haruto was suddenly shocked when he sensed the presence, and looking back he saw a man standing on the rooftop immediately. Haruto drew his sword from storage and stood up to face the man, demanding to know who he was. The man was none other than the curious Muramasa. The wise and exalted magic swordsman asked Haruto if he was that person, and stated that he wanted to borrow his strength. Muramasa then looked at him seriously and said, "The destruction of the world is almost upon us, Haruto." Haruto realized he hadn't sensed Muramasa's presence until he was right in front of him. This was no ordinary person. Muramasa was not just any guy. Haruto then asked Muramasa if he really meant the destruction of the world, and what exactly he was talking about. Muramasa replied that it was exactly as it sounded. In the near future, everything Haruto cherished would be reduced to nothing and disappear. This shocked Haruto, who immediately thought of Ria. He pointed his sword at Muramasa, saying that he couldn't just believe a claim like that, especially since he didn't even know who Muramasa was or what kind of person he might be. He added that Muramasa simply appeared out of nowhere and started making what seemed to be threats, reminding him of someone in particular, his future self, whom he was not very fond of. Haruto then declared that he would act based on his own thoughts and make his own decisions. Muramasa smiled at this and took out a photo, asking Haruto if he still felt the same after seeing it. Haruto lost his patience when he realized the photo was of Ria practicing her dance. In a fit of rage, he released a powerful aura, which surprised Muramasa. This wasn't just any fighting spirit, it was an anomaly. However, Muramasa recognized that Haruto had the potential of a true swordsman. He assured Haruto that he only took the photo as part of a background check and had not touched his sister. Muramasa then drew his sword, swearing in his master's name that he had no further ill intentions. He walked quickly to Haruto, adding that if it was necessary to fight to convince him, he would gladly accept it. This only made Haruto angrier. He told Muramasa he had crossed a line. Muramasa stepped back, warning Haruto that whatever happened next, he should not regret it. Then as they prepared to fight, Muramasa used his killing intent ability. Haruto was shocked to see that there was no Chronos factor around Muramasa, which meant he would not be able to see the flow of time. Noticing Kale's silence, Marius asked if something was wrong, and said that whether he was ready or not, he was coming. Marius then vanished in a blur, and reappeared right in front of Kale, shocking him. Marius explained that his killing intent didn't mean revealing his intent to kill, but rather the opposite. It meant killing his own aura or presence. Marius then swung his sword at Kale, who barely managed to leap, spin in the air, and dodge the attack. Kale realized that Marius's killing intent was removing the Chronos factor from his immediate area. Kale asked Marius why he was explaining how his abilities worked, joking if he was some kind of villain, a half-witted one from a manga. Marius calmly replied that he was telling him because he could still win, even after revealing his secrets. He explained that by eliminating his presence, he could always seize the initiative from his opponent. Suddenly, Marius appeared behind Kale without him even noticing. As Kale turned to face him, Marius swung his sword and managed to cut him. Marius smiled, thinking he had won, but then to his shock, Kale's figure slowly disappeared. It was a clone created with his ability. Avatar replay. The real Kale appeared behind Marius and brought his sword down. But Marius twisted his body just in time to dodge the attack, wondering what was happening. Frustrated that the blow hadn't landed, Kale watched as Marius leaped backward to create some distance. Marius, still confused, realized that he definitely should have cut Kale and wondered if it was more than just an afterimage when Marius stood up. 2 buttons fell from his coat due to the force of Kale's previous attack. Seizing the moment, Kale used his skill Swift Body to rush towards Marius at high speed. As he swung his sword, Marius, realizing the power Kale had, smiled, thinking that this was getting interesting. Marius blocked Kale's sword with his own, and the force between their weapons sent sparks flying. Marius looked at Kale, asking what he would do next. Kale, knowing he couldn't rely on seeing the flow of time, decided to try a different technique. He lightly pushed Marius's sword and activated his skill Stop Chain, which immobilized Marius and his sword. Marius was shocked to find himself completely restricted. Kale gathered some of his power in his fist, and Marius was even more surprised when Kale ducked to the side and threw a punch using his skill Chrono Fist. Stunned. For a moment, Marius let go of his sword but managed to activate his skill Steel Body just in time. Kale's punch hit Marius, causing a loud explosion between them and sending Marius flying. Although he remained unharmed, Marius marveled at the power of Kale's attack, realizing it wasn't just a random punch. He then stared at Kale, recognizing him as an awakened. Kale cursed in frustration. Realizing that even his last attack hadn't worked, he was confused when Muramasa suddenly suggested that they stop. Muramasa then calmly walked towards Haruto, sincerely apologizing for what he had said about his sister. He bowed deeply, begging for forgiveness for his intentional transgression, and swearing that he would never do something like that again. Haruto was surprised and asked what was happening. Muramasa simply picked up his sword and said that he was leaving now. Haruto shouted after him, demanding to know why he was deciding this on his own, and insisting that their match wasn't over yet. Muramasa replied that of course, this wasn't settled, and that they should continue at his school. Haruto, more confused than ever, asked what he meant by his school. Muramasa explained that Haruto had a unique talent, but was still too weak, and hadn't reached the level Muramasa wanted him to be at. He suggested that Haruto learn the mysteries of the sword at his school to help him become stronger. Haruto then remembered the message from his future self, telling him that his true talent lay with the sword, and that, if he wanted to become a great space-time mage, he would first have to live by the sword. Haruto reminded Muramasa that he still couldn't trust him so easily. Muramasa agreed, but pointed out that he was definitely stronger than Haruto now, asking if that wasn't reason enough. He then told Haruto that he would be waiting for him at the school before disappearing. Confused, Haruto felt something in his pocket, and pulled out an exchange permit between his school and the Azabu school. He realized Muramasa must have slipped it into his pocket during the fight, understanding that Muramasa was referring to Azabu as his school. Haruto thought furiously that Muramasa definitely had a way of getting on his nerves. Meanwhile, Muramasa was at the school entrance, adjusting his coat. He thought to himself that Haruto was truly special. Before the 7 sages had a chance to use Haruto as a disposable pawn, Muramasa was determined to train him well. So, when Haruto joined the 7 sages, he would help him overthrow them and take their power. Muramasa silently vowed, determined to ruin Kurogane's plans. On the roof, Haruto examined the exchange student permit. It stated that the objective was to improve the true strength of each school's adventurers. The duration was listed as July 1st to the 13th, 2054. The application requirements included being an enrolled student at a school affiliated with the Adventurer Cultivation Agency, with student council members, receiving Category A treatment, and perks at the exchange school. As he was reading, Yuzuki suddenly burst onto the roof, shouting that she had found him and that today, he would surely join their student council. Haruto stood up, saying her timing was perfect. He casually told Yuzuki that he was in. She froze in shock, surprised that he had actually agreed to join the student council. A week later, at the Azabu branch of the Adventurers Educational Agency, Haruto was walking with Yuzuki. She expressed how impressed she was, not only because he had joined the student council, but also because he wanted to go with her to Azabu Academy as an exchange student. He replied that it was expected of a student council member, although in truth, he was more motivated by the A-level perks mentioned in the document. Yuzuki explained that Azabu Academy was known for producing many S-rank adventurers and was considered the best educational and training institution in Japan. She added that it was a super elite school that required a magic deviation value above 70 for admission. Before entering the building, Yuzuki turned back to him excitedly, encouraging him to do his best so he wouldn't get left behind. He agreed hesitantly, feeling a bit overwhelmed. As they entered and found themselves in a huge hall, Yuzuki, suggested they greet the council president first. As they walked through the lounge, Haruto noticed that the students inside were looking at them curiously, wondering where these two strangers had come from. But he decided not to worry about it and to just go at his own pace. Yuzuki, noticing his discomfort, stammered reassuringly that there was no need to be afraid because she was right there with him. He agreed but couldn't help but wonder if Yuzuki would really be alright in this place. On the 20th floor, they arrived at the council president's office. Yuzuki pointed, and Haruto knocked on the door. When they entered, Muramasa was sitting in the middle of the room, waiting for them. He introduced himself as the school's council president, leaving Haruto in disbelief that this was actually Muramasa's school. Muramasa stood up and welcomed them to Azabu Academy, explaining that, in these times, when mages were in their golden age, the school specialized strictly in the cultivation of swordsmanship, even within the Adventurer Cultivation Agency. They were unique. He added that instead of magic duels, sword duels were held, and during the student exchange program, he expected them to climb to the top of the school's rankings through duels. Haruto was shocked when Muramasa pointed directly at him, but before he could react, Yuzuki stammered for Muramasa to wait a minute, insisting that none of that should be part of the student exchange program's activities. However, Haruto asked Muramasa if he could fight him again if he participated, leaving Yuzuki confused and stuttering, asking what he meant by again. Muramasa explained that the student who reaches the #1 spot in the rankings earns the right to challenge the strongest individual in Azabu School itself. Haruto, excited by this, declared that it was exactly what he wanted to hear, and that he would climb to the top and defeat Muramasa as quickly as possible, so he could go home sooner. Shocking Yuzuki, and leaving her in a panic, Haruto told Muramasa that his only complaint was that their previous fight had ended halfway through, and that once they settled it, he would have no reason to stay. Muramasa replied that he had no problem with that, and that the school respected any swordsman who aimed for the top, regardless of their attitude or posture. Muramasa then opened a system, and provided them with the school's student IDs and class schedules, explaining that with these, they would be able to access the school's facilities and equipment, enjoying more advantages, as members of the student council. Haruto saw that his adventurer level in the swordsman course was 98, placing him at 4,392 moth, 5th place out of 14,000 in the Azabu school rankings. With access to greater privileges, he wondered if the ranking system worked the same way as Nakano's, pondering if he should challenge the higher-ranking students, one after another, to climb up quickly after settling everything. Muramasa wished him success and took his leave. As they walked down the hallway, Yuzuki exclaimed that the situation was outrageous, asking how she was supposed to aim for the top of the school rankings. Haruto agreed, telling her there was no need for the newly appointed Madam President to do that in the first place. Then, he thought about the fastest way to climb the ranks, considering places where high-ranking students might gather, like special auditoriums, student council rooms, dueling arenas, the martial arts club building, the classroom building, the cafeteria, the event hall, and even the council president's office. With a determined smile, Haruto decided to visit these places. A moment later, in the cafeteria on the 2nd floor of the Adventurer Cultivation Agency, a crowd of students had gathered to eat, and Yuzuki asked if he forgot to have breakfast that morning, to which he simply replied that he had. Suddenly, a virtual robot appeared beside them, welcoming them and asking if they were exchange students from another part of Japan. The robot explained that the school's motto is, "Your breakfast determines your entire day," and it encouraged all students to have a hearty breakfast. If they didn't get a chance to eat at home, they were welcome to enjoy it to their heart's content here. He noticed a holographic maid was scanning their student IDs and making targeted announcements for them. Yuzuki, surprised by the luxurious menu, asked if everything was free, amazed at how well-funded the schools truly were. She picked up a pair of tongs and declared it was time for a thorough inspection. He encouraged her to continue, and she began to examine the food, delighted by the full automation and the perfectly balanced menu of nutrients and calories. She exclaimed that this was the cafeteria of her dreams, one she had only imagined until now, and insisted they needed to adopt this system at their own school immediately. As he watched the eccentricity of the new student council president, he remembered his true reason for coming to the cafeteria. Suddenly, a loud bang caught his attention, followed by the voice of a man mocking that someone had something they didn't deserve. Looking to the side, he saw a group of men harassing a lone student. The student nervously asked them to stop, but the group's leader sneered, saying it would be a waste on a weakling like him, as he raised a sword. The student begged for them to return it, but the leader shouted for him to shut up, claiming this was the punishment. for sitting in the Hydor faction's seats without permission. Just as Haruto suspected, bullies were present even here. He knew that no matter how elite a school is, there will always be people like this, and teachers can't be everywhere. School cafeterias were common hotspots for this kind of behavior, but he felt lucky to have found them immediately. This meant he could deal with them sooner. The leader mocked the student, saying he wasn't allowed to enter the cafeteria unless his rank was at least in the double digits, and sarcastically asked if he didn't know this rule. The student stammered that the seats shouldn't matter in the cafeteria, but the leader grabbed him, shouting that it did matter, calling him a plague god with no magic ability, a phrase that surprised Haruto. The leader then pushed the student to the ground, and the crowd laughed at the scene, which led Haruto to decide it was time to intervene. The leader smirked, taunting the student by saying that giving him the sword would be like casting pearls before swine, so he would be keeping it. One of the other bullies mentioned that the sword looked valuable, and that if they took it to the guild shop, the Hydor faction's budget would increase greatly. The leader waved his hand dismissively, telling him he could leave, but the man, stammering yet defiant, shouted back, demanding the return of his sword, explaining that it was a precious possession given to him by his father. This angered the leader, who threw a punch, shouting that he didn't care about the man's personal circumstances. The man braced himself, tilting his head to take the blow, only for the leader's punch to be stopped in mid-air. Haruto intervened, blocking the punch with a single hand, leaving both the leader and the victim stunned. The leader shouted, demanding to know who Haruto was, shocked that his punch was stopped so easily. Haruto calmly replied that he was an exchange student from Nakano School, that he was looking for the highest-ranked student at this school, so he asked the leader directly where he could find that person. The defiant leader shouted that he had no reason to give him that information. In response, Haruto squeezed the leader's fist, forcing him to his knees and making him cry out in pain. Haruto insisted, saying that the fastest way to find the highest-ranking student was to ask a hot-blooded person like him. The leader's lackeys panicked, asking Haruto what he had just done and what he wanted. But Haruto just stared them down, repeating his question about where he could find the highest-level student. The leader, now visibly terrified, suddenly hesitated. A booming voice interrupted, saying, "That's enough." A sword was thrown towards Haruto, and he barely managed to leap back in time to dodge. Looking up, Haruto noticed the faint impression of an invisible blade pointed at him, as if it had nearly cut him. The true leader of the Raido faction, Raido Nobunaga, had arrived with his members. Nobunaga sternly warned Haruto not to intimidate his classmates. Raido Nobunaga, a third-year student who was ranked third in the swordsmanship course at Azabu School, was also the head of the Kishin sword-style school and the leader of the Raido faction. Although the school administration struggled with his unruly behavior, Nobunaga's skill level was nearly equal to that of the top-ranked student, making him a strong candidate for a future teaching position upon completing the program. The bullied man could hardly believe that Nobunaga, known for his formidable reputation, was now confronting an exchange student. Nobunaga then asked how things had come to this, to which Haruto replied, calmly, that his faction members were bullying a student, pointing to the victim, and that he had only stepped in to stop it. Annoyed, Nobunaga turned to his men, asking if it was true. The bullies denied it, claiming the exchange student was lying, and that they were just trying to save seats for the faction. Frustrated, Nobunaga approached his men and punched one of them, then struck the others, leaving all three of them on the ground. Nobunaga said he could tell they were lying by the shiftiness in their eyes. He then picked up the student's sword, bowed and apologized for the trouble his faction members caused. As the faction's leader, he expressed his sincere regret on their behalf. Arthur assured Nolan that there was no need to apologize, saying it wasn't an issue. Nolan then returned the sword to the man, who gratefully accepted it and thanked Nolan. Arthur was surprised that someone so upright and straightforward would lead the faction. Standing up, Nolan commented that he would have preferred to leave things be and enjoy the day, but leaving this incident unanswered would harm the dignity of the faction. He then challenged Arthur to a duel and asked if he would accept. The bullied student, visibly worried, advised Arthur to refuse, reminding him that Nolan was ranked third in the school. Arthur, however, accepted the challenge without hesitation, telling Nolan that he would gladly face him. Nolan thanked him, saying that it made things easier, and walked away, adding that he would be waiting in the arena after class. As Nolan walked away, Arthur watched for a few moments. The bullied student approached Arthur, stuttering with worry, asking if he would really be all right. The student, visibly shaken, explained that Nolan was the third best swordsman, and asked why Arthur would accept such a risky challenge. Arthur replied by asking the student if he was okay with the way things were. He pointed out that if left unchecked, These bullies would harass him for the rest of high school. The man, gripping his sword tightly, replied that he was used to enduring it, and hoped it would eventually stop. The sword began to emit magic, causing Arthur to notice. Activating his Eye of Time, he recognized the magic within the sword. Arthur then challenged him directly, saying he was addressing the real person inside him and asking how he felt when his sword was stolen. The man looked confused, so Arthur explained that even though he knew he couldn't win, he still acted, driven by something deeper. The man was momentarily speechless, and Arthur, frustrated, asked if he was truly satisfied with leaving things as they were. After a pause, the man admitted he didn't want to endure it anymore. He wanted to stand up to them and keep his sword safe. Arthur smiled and praised his determination, then asked for his name, holding out his hand. The man shook it and introduced himself as Milo Burke. Arthur introduced himself in return, then encouraged Burke to challenge the bully's leader to a duel. Although Burke looked shocked, Arthur reassured him, promising to ensure his victory. He told Burke that they should both aim for victory in their respective matches, to which Burke nodded in agreement. At that moment, Haruto's phone buzzed with a barrage of messages. It was Yuzuki, asking where he had gone and complaining that she was still eating. This made him sigh in despair. Later, in the arena's waiting room, Yuzuki burst in suddenly, shouting and asking what Haruto was thinking. For agreeing to a sword duel on his first day as an exchange student, he tried to calm her down, simply responding that a lot had happened, which only frustrated her more. She demanded to know if he really thought that explanation was enough. Haruto retorted, reminding her that the council president himself had encouraged them to aim for the top ranking, which led him to think that the fastest way to climb would be to directly challenge the third-ranked student. Yuzuki held her head in exasperation. She said she was surprised he had managed to arrange a duel so easily. Haruto then mentioned that his goal was to reach the #1 spot in the rankings, so he could directly challenge the council president, defeat him, and then go home immediately. Hearing this, Ibuki was surprised by his audacity and asked if he was being serious. But then, calming down, Ibuki admitted that if anyone could pull it off, it would be Haruto, adding that if he defeated the council president, it would be a historic achievement for Azabu Academy. Ibuki also mentioned that he could even win the legendary skill cube. Curious, Haruto asked what a skill cube was, as it was the first time he had ever heard of it. Ibuki explained that Kiryuke Kimitsu, the school's founder, achieved mastery over the mysteries of the sword, and codified them into a skill cube. This revelation surprised Haruto, who remembered Muramasa, telling him to unravel the mysteries of the sword at the academy. Haruto asked Ibuki what was specifically inside the cube, and Ibuki explained that it contained a unique sword skill, one that only Kimitsu himself had mastered, the dimensional slash. Stunned, Haruto asked if this technique really allowed one to cut through dimensions. Ibuki nodded, adding that although it was just a rumor, no one had ever seen it in action. Haruto wondered if this ability could help his future self. Feeling even more determined not to lose the duel, he clenched his fist and declared his newfound motivation and fighting spirit. But first, he told Ibuki that he would be the opening act. Ibuki stammered, but agreed, nervously saying he would do his best. Ibuki then mentioned that the bully was furious when he was challenged to a duel, asking Haruto if he had some secret plan to guarantee his victory. Haruto reassured him, saying that if he followed his instructions, he would definitely win. He then asked Ibuki to show him his sword. In the arena of the Azabu branch of the Adventurer Cultivation Agency, students gathered around the stage. They were cheering as Ibuki and his opponent, the bully, faced off. The bully pointed his sword at Ibuki, challenging him. He taunted Ibuki, promising to beat him black and blue, which visibly upset Ibuki, but he remained silent. In the crowd, Yuzuki watched nervously and asked Haruto if Ibuki would really be okay. Haruto confidently assured her that Ibuki would be fine and was fully capable of handling it. Moments before, Haruto had given Ibuki specific instructions. The moment the duel began, he was to unsheath his sword and make a single, fluid strike without hesitation. Confused, Ibuki asked if that was really all he needed to do. Haruto nodded, explaining that the bully would likely charge at him immediately. Seeing him as an easy target, Haruto then advised Ibuki to keep his eyes open, look straight ahead, and execute a precise cut without hesitation. If Ibuki followed these steps, he would win. With determination, Ibuki agreed, saying he trusted Haruto's advice. Back in the present, Haruto watched Ibuki from a distance, smiling and cheering for him, saying that he could definitely do it. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the stage, Muramasa observed the duel participants, watching the tense confrontation about to unfold. The announcer introduced the duelists. Mitsurugi Ibuki from Class 2 Fahrenheit, ranked 3,424th in the swordsman course, and Kentaro Kim, from Class 2 Fahrenheit, ranked 3,424th place. In the swordsman course, Class 2A, ranked 153rd place. In a sarcastic tone, Kentaro told Ibuki that, after he won, they should continue to get along. Ibuki was silent for a moment, then replied, "I understand," adding that, if he happened to win, Kentaro should leave him alone forever. He then shouted, calling Kentaro a blockhead, which enraged Kentaro, who yelled back about Ibuki's audacity. The crowd was shocked by Ibuki's outburst, but Haruto simply smiled with pride. Ibuki took a deep breath, holding his sword nervously as he took his stance. Kentaro opened his inventory as soon as the host announced the start of the match, drawing a second sword and pointing both at Ibuki. Haruto was surprised to see Kentaro wielding two swords, thinking he was either highly skilled or a fool. Kentaro charged towards Ibuki exactly as Haruto had predicted. Ibuki remembered Haruto's advice, to never look away from his opponent, so he fixed his gaze firmly on the approaching Kentaro. Recalling the next step, he drew his sword and unleashed a mighty slash upon Quentin. Caught off guard by Ivor's speed, Quentin tried to block with both swords, but Ivor's attack was so fast and strong that it cut through both of them. Quentin was thrown backward, crashing into the wall and coughing up blood before he collapsed. His two henchmen were shocked, while their leader, Nolan, simply sighed in disappointment. The announcer declared Ivor the winner, and the crowd erupted in applause. Yuki, amazed, told Harrison that Ivor had actually won. Harrison replied that it was to be expected, explaining that Ivor's blade was actually a magic sword. Yuki was stunned by this revelation. Earlier, Harrison had secretly used his Eye of Time ability to glimpse the sword's properties. He realized it possessed a rare special effect. Contrary to what everyone believed, Ivor didn't have zero magical ability. The sword was continuously absorbing his magic, which led to his poor evaluation. Moreover, the magic sword had the unique ability to release all the magic it absorbed from Ivor in a single, powerful burst. Since Ivor had carried the sword for 3 years without defeating a single monster, it had stockpiled a considerable amount of power. For some reason, Ivor seemed unaware that his sword was magical, but Harrison knew that. Regardless, a win was a win. A short time later, in the lounge, Ivor enthusiastically thanked Harrison, saying his victory was all thanks to him. He expressed his astonishment at everything that had happened since Harrison arrived. Repeatedly saying how impressed he was, Harrison simply downplayed his own role, telling Ivor that it was all due to his own strength. He decided to tell Ivor about the sword's magic when they had more time. Turning around, he told Ivor that it was now his turn. Back in the arena, Murasame watched intently from above. Nolan told Harrison that he intended to give it his all, as he was fighting for the dignity of the regal faction. Harrison confidently replied that he expected nothing less. The two of them unsheathed their swords, Nolan resting his blade on his shoulder, while Harrison held his low by his side. They faced off, a determined smile on each of their faces. As they prepared for their duel, the announcer signaled the start of the match. Harrison observed that Nolan remained completely still, calmly standing his ground instead of making the first move, while Yuki and Ivor watched on with concern. Meanwhile, the members of Nolan's faction, including a bandaged Quentin, eagerly awaited their leader's victory. Murasame observed in silence. Harrison wondered about Nolan's strategy, noting that his opponent's stance seemed to have many openings. Though uncertain of Nolan's intentions, Harrison decided not to hold back. He charged forward, rapidly closing the distance, but was stunned to see Nobunaga begin to smile, unleashing a powerful and familiar pressure. It was the same intense aura he had encountered before, and Haruto stopped in his tracks. He activated his Eye of Time ability to analyze Nobunaga, but to his surprise, he saw no Chronos factor around him. He began to suspect that the top swordsman of Azabu Academy might be using a killing intent technique instead of relying on time-related abilities. This rendered his time flow-based movement predictions useless. Nobunaga then advanced slowly, stopping just within range before activating a secret technique of the Kishin style. He unleashed a formless attack, known as Aesthetics of Nature, which carved deep gashes into the stage floor with invisible blades that sliced in every direction. Realizing the danger, Haruto leaped upwards to escape, but Nobunaga appeared above him in an instant, cutting off his escape. Haruto managed to block the sudden strike from Nobunaga with his sword, tightening his grip and channeling his strength into his defense, which seemed to impress Nobunaga. Seizing the opportunity, Haruto launched a chrono punch toward Nobunaga's chest. Nobunaga activated Steel Body just in time, taking the blow head-on. To Haruto's shock, the attack left Nobunaga completely unharmed. Both fighters then retreated to reassess their positions. Nobunaga noted Haruto's skill in dealing with the invisible slashes of the Kishin style and questioned the extent of Haruto's abilities. Haruto, speechless, realized that Nobunaga had absorbed his chrono fist without a scratch. Nobunaga then explained that his sword style emphasized not only mastery of the sword, but also conditioning the body, training it to be as tough and sharp as a blade itself. Upon hearing this, Haruto took a deep breath, reminding himself to trust his instincts, rather than relying on his eye of time for this duel. Noticing that Haruto seemed to have cleared his mind, Nobunaga adjusted his own focus. Haruto activated his quick body ability while Nobunaga used his stealth steps, both increasing their speed. Haruto dashed forward, delivering a powerful slash, but Nobunaga dodged just as quickly, counter-attacking with a precise strike. Haruto blocked, then spun in mid-air to unleash another attack. Nobunaga evaded by leaning back, anchoring himself by planting his sword into the ground for support. He followed up with a kick that sent Haruto flying, but Haruto managed to right himself before regaining his footing, gripping his sword tightly. Haruto acknowledged Nobunaga's strength. Fueled by determination, he charged forward once more, confident that victory would be his. Haruto swung his sword back to gather more power, and unleashed an attack on Nobunaga, who blocked it with ease. Nobunaga then pressed forward, unleashing a powerful blow and challenging Haruto to face him head-on. Haruto quickly leaped back to dodge, and without even touching the ground, he swung his sword back for another powerful strike, which Nobunaga blocked as well. The students watching were captivated, their eyes struggling to keep up with the intense duel unfolding before them. Many were amazed by Nobunaga's skill, but they also wondered who this extraordinary exchange student was. Zuki, in a panic, questioned how things had escalated so quickly. He shouted that they might need to revise the entire exchange program. Book cheered for Haruto, while Nobunaga's faction shouted words of encouragement for him. Haruto told himself that he could not afford to lose this match. Certain that victory would be his, he needed to save his future self, and this duel was a crucial step. Nobunaga seemed to sense this determination, observing that Haruto carried a heavy burden. He appreciated Haruto's resolve, but knowing his own reasons, he couldn't afford to lose either. Nobunaga increased the pressure around them. He amplified his strength and determination, which shocked Haruto as he felt the weight of the aura. Nobunaga's intensified aura. Then, with his own solemn purpose in mind, Nobunaga lunged forward to attack. As Nobunaga closed in, memories surfaced from when he was 8 years old. He told his mother he was leaving for school, to which she replied warmly. When he arrived at school and entered the classroom, he found his desk scrawled with hateful words, demanding that he leave and accusing him of being a poor delinquent. Painful insults. His classmates mocked him, expressing pity. Sarcastically, they pretended to wonder who could have done such a thing. Nobunaga remained silent, sitting at his desk while his classmates laughed around him. Later, back at their apartment, he overheard his mother. She was begging a man for more time to pay off a loan. The man expressed some sympathy. He acknowledged that she was only a guarantor for her absent husband, but she was stuck with the debt. She apologized and promised she would find a way to raise the money soon. Seeing his mother's anguish enraged Nobunaga, so he ran to a nearby park. He unleashed his rage on a punching bag he had hung from a tree, vowing to become strong enough to change his life and protect his family. As Nobunaga grew up, he became a boxer, winning fight after fight. After every match, as he collected his winnings, he reminded himself that he needed to get even stronger, strong enough to protect the people he cared about. One day, as he was leaving the ring, Muramasa appeared in the hallway. She identified him as the former middle school student who had become an undefeated champion in the world of illegal underground boxing. Murasame asked if he was the renowned Nobunaga, and Nobunaga answered suspiciously, demanding to know who Murasame was. Murasame replied that he had watched Nobunaga's match and noticed his impressive physique, but he warned that his potential would be wasted at this rate, and Nobunaga became irritated by the comment, demanding an explanation. But Murasame calmly asked if Nobunaga was looking for money to support his family. Furious at the insinuation, Nobunaga pressed him further, but Murasame just smiled. He handed him an envelope with an invitation to learn the way of the sword through the Kishin style. As Nobunaga opened the envelope, Murasame explained that the Kishin style was perfect for those who excelled in martial arts and suggested that after mastering it, Nobunaga should seek him out. Extending his hand, Murasame formally welcomed Nobunaga to Azabu Academy, an academy specializing in swordsmanship, and offered him a full scholarship to cover his tuition. Nobunaga pushed Murasame's hand away, crumpling the envelope with suspicion, dismissing the offer as suspicious and possibly a scam. But then, as he considered the opportunity to become stronger, he unleashed a wave of determination and agreed, declaring he would do anything, if it meant he could achieve the strength he desired. 2 years later, Nobunaga had achieved mastery over the Kishin style, a testament to his lifelong pursuit of strength. He began to understand why Murasame, the chairman of the board, wanted him to attend Azabu Academy. In a place where everything was decided by the sword, individuals with troubled pasts and rude behavior naturally gathered. It became clear that Murasame intended for Nobunaga to unite these rebellious students under his leadership, and soon he found himself in command of the school's delinquents. Although Murasame remained as enigmatic as ever, he showed Nobunaga a way to earn money, allowing him to pay off his family's debt. For this, Nobunaga felt a deep sense of gratitude. To outsiders, the tough group that Nobunaga led might have looked like a gang of misfits, but to him, they represented other versions of himself, flawed individuals struggling to survive the best way they knew how. With that in mind, Nobunaga shouted confidently during the match, declaring that he had no intention of losing, catching Haruto by surprise. Nobunaga then activated his secret Kishin-style technique, Scenic Beauty, which amplified the pressure emanating from his sword to a whole new level. Haruto was astonished, feeling the force radiating from Nobunaga's blade increase dramatically. He realized that if the fight continued like this, he would be overwhelmed by Nobunaga's sheer strength. Looking into Nobunaga's eyes, he sensed an unparalleled sincerity in him, unlike any opponent he had ever faced before. Knowing he couldn't rely on his time manipulation abilities, Haruto decided to trust in his own strength and the power of his sword, which had been his faithful ally in every battle. In the heat of battle, Haruto activated his Chaos Sword ability, summoning his power to face Nobunaga head-on. He unleashed a force that matched Nobunaga's, pouring all his energy into the blade, as he remembered the advice from his future self. To become a great space-time mage, he must first live by the sword. Nobunaga was caught by surprise. He watched as Haruto laughed with joy in the midst of the clash, their swords colliding with overwhelming force. Pushing them both back, Nobunaga began to understand Haruto's joy. He felt a surge of excitement, and the two charged forward again, putting all their strength into the next strike. As their swords clashed once more, the impact caused a massive explosion, engulfing the arena in thick smoke. The audience held its breath. Yuzuki and Ibuki watched anxiously, as did Nobunaga's followers. All of them were deeply worried about their leader. Muramasa, however, remained silent, calmly waiting for the outcome as the smoke began to clear. Both fighters became visible in the center of the stage. However, Nobunaga's sword was broken, and blood trickled from his wounds. Disbelief washed over him as he realized Haruto had cut through his steel-like body. It was something he had thought impossible. As Nobunaga fell, he admitted to himself that the power of Haruto's sword was limitless, perhaps even surpassing that of the council president. The announcer stammered as he announced Haruto as the winner, leaving the crowd in stunned silence before they erupted in disbelief. Yuzuki looked dizzy with shock, while Haruto remained calm, gazing at Nobunaga. As the healers rushed to attend to him, Muramasa observed the scene. He was silently impressed that Haruto had defeated Nobunaga, who was ranked third. Doing so almost exclusively through swordsmanship proved to Muramasa that Haruto was indeed the awakened one. He considered him an excellent candidate to face the dreaded enemies that have plagued Azabu for the last 50 years. Meanwhile, Haruto looked at his trembling hand, reflecting on the intensity of the duel. He hadn't anticipated just how thrilling the experience would be, and for a moment, he simply marveled at the joy of such a hard-fought battle. Later, outside the academy, Haruto was left speechless when Nobunaga and his group bowed in unison. They apologized for the trouble they had caused. Haruto replied that everything was fine now, glancing at Ibuki, who agreed with a nod. Nobunaga then raised his head, thanking him for sparing them any further complications. With a grin, he slung his arm around Haruto's shoulder, confessing that, curiously enough, losing so badly had been refreshing. Haruto noted how quickly Nobunaga's mood had changed, and how full of energy he now seemed. But then, upon noticing other students watching them, he stammered, asking Nobunaga to take it easy, saying he didn't want to draw any more attention. Nobunaga chuckled, reassuring Haruto that there was no need to be ashamed. He explained that since the Raito faction had now officially lost to him, they would stand by his side and come to his aid whenever he needed. Haruto, surprised by this declaration, nodded and replied that he understood, adding that he would certainly call on him if he ever found himself in a difficult situation. Nobunaga agreed enthusiastically, assuring Haruto that he could count on them. The next day, in his apartment, Haruto watched the news. The broadcast reported that, according to the Metropolitan Police Department, crime rates had continued to fall across the country, although the damage, caused by migratory monster species emerging from dungeons, was increasing every year. In response, both the police and the Japan Self-Defense Forces were calling for greater collaboration with the Adventurers Guild. The reporter also noted that, according to guild statistics, Japan's gross domestic product had maintained an annual growth rate of more than 10%, ever since dungeons began appearing worldwide 30 years ago. After paying respects to his parents, Haruto grabbed his bag as the news report continued, explaining that the unique population of dungeon exploration experts in Japan had given the country an economic edge. The government had taken proactive measures, funneling subsidies to companies and universities in Japan to develop anti-monster equipment and magic stone technology. Ri handed Haruto his lunch, and he thanked her for preparing it as he put on his shoes. She asked if he was going to Azabu school again today. Haruto confirmed, explaining that he was still in the middle of a student exchange program. Ri commented that it was cool, mentioning that the school's impressive buildings made her wish she could visit at least once. Haruto laughed, describing the school's interior as surprisingly old-fashioned, but admitting that he was being treated like royalty there. Smiling, Ri commented that it was wonderful for him to have a life so normal. Haruto was moved by Ri's bright smile and wholeheartedly agreed with her. He then asked if it was true that she would be starting elementary school that day. She confirmed, mentioning that she still only had memories from primary school and needed to catch up. Haruto patted her head, assuring her he would be cheering for her and that they should both do their best, silently vowing to never let her feel sadness again. Later, as he was walking down a street near the school, Azabu, he heard a woman shouting for someone to stop and let her go. A man was holding her arm, demanding to know if she had any idea how much money he had spent on her. Some nearby students began to murmur, recognizing the woman as Melody, a well-known influencer. With over 3 million followers, she was about to debut as a singer. Soon Ethan glanced back. Initially deciding it was none of his business, he kept walking. Meanwhile, Melody broke free, scolding the man for ambushing her and mocking him for being so shameless in trying to monopolize her. Enraged, the man warned that there was a newly discovered dungeon nearby, and it could be dangerous, but she kept running. Melody only stopped when she heard something disturbing. Ahead of her, she looked up and saw a dungeon gate tear open in the air. To her horror, monsters began to emerge. The creatures were imperial centipedes, classified as Class B monsters, designated for annihilation, with a subjugation rank of 5, and a recommended raid level of 1,200, leaving her paralyzed with fear. Melody fell to the ground, frozen in fear and crying as the monstrous centipedes advanced. The people nearby were equally horrified, panicking as they questioned why monsters had emerged outside the dungeon. Some speculated it was one of the migratory species, and chaos erupted as everyone ran to escape, leaving Melody alone and trembling in terror. As one of the centipede's heads opened its massive jaws and lunged towards her, the onlookers screamed. Convinced she wouldn't survive, suddenly Ethan leaped towards the monster. Just as the centipede was about to bite, its head was sliced off in an instant, shattering the ground beneath it. Spraying a jet of green blood everywhere, the crowd watched in shock as the monster writhed in agony. Ethan calmly carried Melody away from the creature as she opened her eyes. She was surprised to see him holding her. He gently set her down on the ground, telling her to run quickly. And then he turned to leave, rendering her speechless. Ethan stopped near the centipede. Hesitating, he didn't want to get involved in any more troublesome situations, but he knew he would have trouble sleeping if he allowed these people to be slaughtered. Then, to his surprise, he saw the severed head regenerating, reattaching itself to the creature's body. He realized the monster had a regeneration ability. At that moment, a group of adventurers arrived. The group's leader assessed the situation, asked if everyone was okay, and introduced his team as members of the branch. From the Minato district of the Adventurers Guild, upon spotting Ethan, they told him to fall back, warning that he would be killed if he stayed. One of the adventurers reported to the leader that the monster was a Class B annihilation designated creature with an S-rank subjugation rating, requiring a raid level of over 1,000. The visibly worried leader noted that the group's average level was only 80, and doubted they stood any chance. Another member suggested signaling the 7 sages for help, but the leader dismissed the idea, shouting that they wouldn't arrive in time with no other choice. The adventurers prepared to fight, determined to protect the people despite the odds. Haruto watched them silently from a distance. At that moment, one of the centipede's heads lunged towards 2 of the adventurers who took defensive stances despite knowing they were outmatched. Fortunately, a chain materialized, stopping the monster's head in mid-air. It was Haruto using his stop chain ability. The bewildered adventurers wondered aloud if they had been saved. Haruto, paying no mind to the attention, activated his space-time magic to tighten his grip on the creature, and then used his swift body skill, propelling himself forward at high speed. Sensing the danger, the centipede tilted its head and spat a toxic liquid at him. Haruto dodged, jumping away just in time, and noticed the ground dissolving from the liquid's impact. He quickly deduced it was a corrosive poison attack and resolved to minimize collateral damage. Suddenly the monster appeared beneath him with its mandibles wide open, and bit down, seemingly tearing him in half, but Haruto vanished like a projection. Shocking the creature thanks to his avatar reproduction skill, he had avoided death, explaining that the version that was hit was just an echo of himself from 0.3 seconds ago. He seized the opportunity, swinging his sword in a powerful arc that sliced off the creature's head in a single blow. The adventurer's leader was stunned as the massive head crashed to the ground and nearby. Malulu watched in awe. Haruto approached the decapitated head, placing his hand above it. What are your thoughts on the story? Leave a comment below, and rate it from 0 to 10. I can't wait to read what you think.